I want to welcome everybody and thank you all for being here. We have a great and busy agenda today. I want to introduce, first of all, to everybody, Jeff Hatchberg, who's going to be our technical person today. If we have any issues, we can talk to him in chat, or we can raise our hands. So if you have questions, you could put those in chat as well. I also want to make sure that everybody knows that this is being recorded today and will be available to me by next week. And so you just need to ask me and I'll be happy to send that along to you. So getting on with our agenda, the first people that we have on our agenda today are Patricia Thompson and Erica Terwilliger. If you two are ready to get started with your presentation, your SUNY update, that would be wonderful.
Sure. Thank you, Rebecca. Good morning, everyone. I'm Patty Thompson. I see that there are some new faces on the Zoom call today. It's nice to see everyone. Happy Friday. This is definitely a departure from how we normally do our SUNYFAP directors meeting on an annual basis. Sorry that we're not greeting you all at SUNY Plaza down in Albany, but certainly this has become a really interesting way for all of us to communicate and stay in touch during these crazy times. It's nice to see so many people. It looks like the numbers keep going up, which is great. This is a really nice collaboration between SUNYFAP and those of us who work at the system office. So I want to just say hello to everyone from everyone at the system office. You guys know that Erica and I are really a team of one in the building, along with our assistant, Esther, who normally helps us to organize these events on an annual basis. I think she really enjoys it. And this year she's a little sad that she's not greeting everyone and helping us get lunch, but this is another way for us to touch base. So in my role, I'll just tell you guys really quickly, for those of you who are new, I work directly with every one of you for anything that you need that's system administration related. So if you ever are in need of a certain document, or if you're doing something like a PPA, or you bump into something that your administration is looking for, you can always call upon Erica or myself to assist you with that. We're also a policy office, and I'm going to talk a little bit today about what we do as far as the policy things and what's been going on in Washington, as well as what's going on right in Albany. But we're happy to sort of go through today in these very different times. We'll approach things a little bit differently today. And I guess that's pretty much everything. You guys probably have, most of you have spoken to Erica, may not have spoken to me directly, but I do think that at some point you probably will. And I look forward to meeting you guys in person if I guess we will at some point post-COVID, whenever post-COVID is. So I have a few things to go through today, and I'm going to start, but I want to ask Rebecca. Thank you to Rebecca for organizing this along with Patty Noren. You guys have great leadership, and I know that some of you who are on this call are also on the executive leadership group of SUNYFAP. We're looking forward to even better collaborations as we move forward, because these last few months have been a little crazy for everybody, but we're excited that we're still here and we're able to have these touch points, which are so important. Yesterday we met with the admissions folks, and it was a long day. These are long days, so we'll try to keep everything nice and tight. Erica's nodding. She was definitely part of that long day, as was Julietta. Hi, Julietta is also here from our office down in New York City. So, okay, I think that's pretty much it. Can I go ahead and share my screen, Rebecca?
Yes, and you might, I'm not sure if Jeff needs to help you with that, if you gave your information to Jeff, or.
Oh, no, I thought I could just share my screen.
Yeah, Patty, you're already a co-host, so you should be able to do that.
Perfect.
Thank you, Jeff. Jeff's another person I haven't seen in ages. Let me just try to share a screen. I've got a screen screen show that I think you guys will be helpful. I've obviously done introductions already. You know, we at System, what we do is a little bit of everything from our office. So in different capacities, you would be working with Erica or myself. And we do have, in the past, we've had a couple of different part-time staffers who help us with different projects. And I can talk a little bit more about that as we go through. But I wanted to just start by going sort of through where we are right now and just sort of set the table for today. Everyone knows that these have been really, really unprecedented times. I mean, to say that, I think when we were doing our financial aid webinars, which we were doing weekly initially and then less frequently as we went along, I used to use the word unsettling. And I think that that's a good way to describe kind of how it felt for so many of us. Even just all of us being so spread out, it was very odd. Everybody else just sort of went home and started working. We at System have always been aware that the challenges for the campuses have been so great, huge challenges. I want to thank you for everything that you have been doing. In my conversations with our executive leadership, one of the things that's clear is that they understand how challenging especially certain roles at the campus. And financial aid is one of those. Everybody at the campuses really stepped up to do like amazing things. And when I've heard stories about how you all have approached meeting the needs of your students during these crazy times, it's amazing. It's inspirational. I know that you were, Zoom meetings, tons of conversations, email, texting, any way that you could communicate with your students to help them to complete the financial aid process. I know that there were some of you who were out in the parking lots doing drive-throughs to pick up documents, and you were taking all of these materials and plowing through the paper during these times when it was just unbelievable to think what you had to do. And so what we did at System was to try to just support as much as we could during those times. Sometimes we were all just keeping our heads above water. I would say that it is amazing how much financial aid got processed. The numbers, the sheer volume across the system is pretty incredible, even in the best of times. So as we're looking at kind of where we were, for those of us who were around during the rollout of Excelsior, that was so monumental. And I just remember thinking at the time that if we got through that, there's probably nothing that's going to be as challenging. And here we are with something that I think has been equally as challenging and probably in so many ways much more upsetting. At the same time as you're trying to meet the needs of your students, you're also trying to keep yourself and your family, your loved ones safe. So I just want to say thank you from everyone at System. Everyone knows, of course, that we have a new chancellor. Chancellor Malatras has been amazing. He really hit the ground running. He was working the weekend before he was even supposed to technically be starting at System administration. I mean, we expected him to begin really at the end of August. And as soon as he was confirmed by the Board of Trustees, he got right to work. So it's really amazing when you have that kind of energy and activity at the top, at the highest level. His work with the SUNY Board of Trustees began on day one. I mean, it was immediate. As everyone knows, his top priority is COVID-19 safety. And of course, that includes testing at this point. That's a huge, huge job for him. He's been to, my goodness, I don't even know how many campuses he's been to. I think somebody said yesterday, like 2/3 of the campuses he's already been to. And from what we hear when he goes to your campuses, and some of you may have already been involved in those meetings with him, he gets right in there, meets with students, he's talking to folks. It's really been something in just a few short weeks, the impact that he's had. He's really helped us to get some really great tools together for our students with regard to mental and emotional health, which is huge. So it's not just the physical health. So the physical health is huge. And we know that making sure that our students are safe from this virus and keeping all of those protocols top of mind at our campuses has been huge. At the same time, he's worrying about students. He's student focused. He has said he wants to continue to be student focused. I think that means good things for all of us in the areas of student services. So student services that's going to be an area of focus. I would say it's not at the moment. We're not seeing big, huge movement yet. We anticipate that we will. Right now, he's worked on some of the most important things, which one of them I didn't put specifically. He hired a student advocate. And I can tell you, it's really when I say hire, Dr. John Graham has already been in the building working on student life over the last few years, and a great colleague of mine. And he is all about students. And some of you may have even had some kind of interaction with him over the years. But most recently, he's become our official student advocate. And what that means is every time there's an issue at a campus, anytime there's, unfortunately, some of these situations where there's a party or there's students doing something they, maybe goes against protocols for safety during these times, he's right there. He's a great colleague of ours, a great supporter of everything that we do. And that's very important because, again, we all work with all these different areas. We need to be working hand in hand. Recently, he announced that there's a committee, a task force that's going to be working specifically on veterans issues. So all of those areas are really so important, and they go beyond some of the bigger, I think when we look at SUNY as an economic engine and SUNY's carbon footprint, all of those things are so important. At the same time, students are what is really our main focus. So having the chancellor come in right away and start talking about students and talking to students and asking for their input, whether they're a veteran or they're on student assembly or it's a student that he runs into at the campus when he's visiting, it's really important. Obviously, it's very important that everybody understand what enrollment priorities are at the moment. You guys are living it. You're right there, boots on the ground. You know what's going on as far as enrollment. We're seeing big challenges there. We're thankful that we haven't seen the dips that I think originally were anticipated in the number of students who maybe didn't come back this semester or students that we lose. We have seen reductions. I'm seeing that with the re-enroll to complete. I'm seeing a higher number of student withdrawals. You guys are dealing with that as you're trying to help them to stay in their classes, get their financial aid processed, all of those things. I'm not telling you anything that you don't already know. I will say from the halls of system administration, everything's about enrollment. And the priority is to get enrollment where it needs to be and keep it there. Particularly challenging during these times. However, we have so many options for how students study, whether they're online or a hybrid or, in the dorms taking classes remotely. So we've got everything going on this year. You all know that. In order to really support you, there's been a lot of webinars that have been offered, and we will send along any information. Eric and I try to make sure that the listserv has everything and the directors as well, have anything they need about information on webinars that would be informational or helpful to you. There will be more coming up. We're going to be able to do re-enroll to complete webinars. There are also separate topics that I think you might find very interesting. For example, yesterday during the enrollment meeting, there was data that was shared from IR, and those data reports are very, very interesting. I know at our SUNYFAP conference in the past, we've had Stuart and Paul, some of the guys from IT and IR, come and actually talk to you all about business intelligence and how to use BI to get reports and different informational pieces on your students. What we're doing is looking to potentially get more, activity around that. So we want to help you to do that. And so we'll continue to get that information out. Recently, the institutional research IR area at SUNY did some surveys. They did surveys of students, employees. Many of you were involved in that. Yesterday, hot off the presses, Teresa did this presentation, and I was thinking that maybe what we could do is have her do a similar one for you all so that you can sort of see the landscape of IR data on enrollment. it's something we'll be talking about with Rebecca and Patty so that we can think about what you might want as we move forward. We want to make sure that you have all the tools that you need. And especially during these times, I think doing webinars used to be, I don't know, kind of a big deal. We would do a webinar, ooh, you know, but I remember back in the day at HESC, it was a big deal in the early days of this technology. However, now we do it all the time. I just hit a button and I'm talking to everybody and we're seeing each other. So it's amazing how far we've come. I say, let's just capitalize on it and do as much as we can, especially now that I think we're past some of the, I don't know, I guess you could say that acute kind of shock of everything that was going on. And we're moving into like a more new normal. So those are the main things on system. I'm happy to take any questions, or you can put them in the chat, right, Rebecca, if you want to just like nod to me if that's good. And Erica is also here. Erica, did you want to add anything at this point? Or are you good?
No, I think I'm good.
Okay, thanks. I told Erica I'll just keep checking with you. And you guys know that's how we do these things. We're a crazy tag team. So let's jump right into state and federal programs. I mean, some of these things I'm not going to try to give you a HESC update. I saw Lisa Simpson is on, and I know Lisa's going to be such a great resource. I'm so glad that she's able to join us today because she's such a great partner in all of this. HESC is in a tough spot. I mean, they do have so much responsibility, and for all of the New York State programs, they have been, you know, just plowing through all of this in a situation where they're trying to also work remotely, and that was not typical for HESC. I worked there for a number of years, as did Erica. And so we know really from the inside what it looks like to pull it off when you've got people working remotely. This is a huge challenge. They've been a great partner. We always are in constant communication with them, as well as the state education department. And I say this because there's always ongoing issues with the state education department. And it could be anything. And I mean, I'm thinking yesterday there was even something that came up regarding what was it that came up? Oh, about out-of-state online schools and that kind of stuff, right, Erica?
Right.
Erica's worked really closely with the state education department on some of those issues. And I don't think we need to necessarily get into it, but I want to let you know that in addition to the advocacy and the work that we do with the folks at HESC, we also do the same with SED. So it's a really great partnership of all of us who work on all the state programs. So what you guys know at this point, and I just want to restate it, that we don't have any information at this point that leads us to believe that there's going to be any federal or state program cuts or increases. I throw that in like, hey, you never know, right? We don't have any information on that. You do all know, and I think everybody knows that when you're getting your reports from HESC, full awards are displaying on all of those for this term. However, the payments are at 80%. And I know that we've talked about that. Some of you have reached out separately and said things like, well, you know, are we going to get the money? When will we get the money? And we don't have an exact answer on that. And I'm not sure that Lisa's going to have any more information later in the day on that, but I don't want to steal from her anything. But I want to just tell everybody, be patient. We're aware of that at System Administration. There's many, many discussions that go on about, you know, well, what will happen if there isn't money? Some campuses will have more of a cash flow issue than others. So those are all things that we work with our business office, our finance area. Our chief financial officer is Eileen McLaughlin. I work with Eileen frequently, almost every week. I meet with her to discuss some of the ongoing issues. And since there are some programs that are not yet available, we want to just make sure that you understand we don't really have any information yet. And again, I think that Lisa will go into a lot more about that on New York State programs. I want to mention CARES funding. Now, when we were doing our weekly webinars for financial aid at one point, it sort of morphed into CARES Act. I think we started talking about the funding that came for students. And as you all know, there were different components, different buckets, I guess you could say, of funding that was available and remains available for our students, and some for our institutions specifically. Eric and I worked with a team at system administration, including the finance area, the auditors, and counsel's office. One of the things that we're doing on a regular basis is working with a group of folks, and we really are happy that when the school, the individual student portion of the CARES Act funding became available, that the CFO really understood that this just could not be just financial aid making decisions. I know that probably everybody on this call, or almost everybody, was involved in some way with CARES Act funding for students and discussions, how to get the money, how much you wanted to put in different areas as far as the plan that you developed. It was very important for us, though, to make sure that they understood that it had to just be, a larger group at the campus with all the responsibilities that you already have on your plate. Having just individual for that was just not, it couldn't be. And even for, Eric and I had concerns that we would be the only ones potentially reviewing the plans that were coming from campuses. So that was also something that we definitely wanted to make sure that others were involved in that. And boy, we couldn't have gotten better partners working on the student piece and the campus plans than the partners that we had from system administration. Amy, I'll kill her name, Montalado, is that how you say her name? Amy and Kim, awesome. And David, there were a couple of other folks that worked on it. Some of you have spoken directly to them, you know what I'm talking about. Campus plans had to be very focused. Obviously, when this funding first became available, what we thought was, oh, this is going to be great. It's funding for any student. Well, as things go with the Department of Education, we went from sort of wide open, get this money out to students right away, to really much more specific rules relating to the awarding of this funding. So while it's not financial aid, you have to still be involved in it. So the campus plans were based on what was the expectation from the Division of Budget for New York State, the executive leadership at SUNY, and your campus group or task force. So we worked closely with everyone on what those rules were, and we appreciate the hard work that everyone did on that. Not only was the federal government really specific on what we could and couldn't do with the funds, they're also very specific on the reporting. So every single campus has to have, all of this information on your campus website, has to be available to students and transparent. And there were so many specifics on, where it needed to be located, et cetera. And this is another example of where campuses really stepped up to meet the challenge and do such a terrific job. Now, I know that Amy and Kim will be giving you a presentation later on the CARES Act funding, and we'll be participating in that discussion as well. So if anything additional comes up, we can get into that. But I know that a lot of you have made modifications to your plan, and we sent out some guidance recently to, make it, I think, even a little bit easier to get those funds out. The most important thing at the end of the day is getting the money out to students who were impacted. And it's not that easy sometimes. So there were some bumps, and I think that the team really helped you all come together to make that possible. There's a lot of funds that have flowed to students already, which of course is wonderful. The next thing I wanted to mention to you, and it relates to what I already said about enrollment. I mean, obviously you guys are always involved with your admissions and your enrollment teams. Many of you are also involved with our team at System Administration and the group in New York City, our recruitment team, which includes Julietta. And they've done such amazing work down in New York City, working with our dreamers, the students who are now eligible for state programs under the DREAM Act. I would say Julietta and Milan have, been unbelievable with their support on that. So I would always send everybody in their direction if you have any questions about that. Working with that population of students, and you guys do it too. It's sensitive. Everybody's very cautious and wants to do the best thing for those students, and it's been crucial work. So we thank them for that. One of the things, though, that I want everybody to just remember, too, is that we do know, I know that you're going to be doing, you probably already have, considerable number of professional judgment adjustments. We do anticipate that that's going to continue. I mean, I'm looking on the national level, we're looking at probably, it depends on where you're reading, but 40 or 45% of students are looking to come to have some kind of discussion about a change in their circumstances. It's not easy. I know you are all working very diligently to help students in those cases. I wanted to let you know, though, that I would say probably more than ever, we have weighed in on that with our admissions and recruitment folks. Very important, because people are very nervous. You guys know that. I'm just going to restate it. I spoke to guidance counselors the other day with, Julietta and Maylin and Sherry Perillo, and a lot of other folks were involved in those discussions. And one of the things that we said was, we don't want to lose students because they're scared, they're concerned, or they're confused. With SUNY having so many options as far as, meeting the needs of their students academically, the big thing comes down to cost, affordability. So we know that you're going to be doing more of those. The message is pretty strong. Don't walk away from SUNY without stepping back and coming to us and giving us the opportunity to help you and to explain. You might be thinking, I already do that. I know that you do. It's going to be more, expect it to be more. And we appreciate so much the work that you're doing. When we were speaking to our admissions folks, we've heard more and more about collaborations between our 2-year and 4-year campuses, helping students where, and sometimes it's formal, where you have a written partnership agreed upon. If a student doesn't get into my 4-year campus, I'm going to send them over to the 2-year, and that's awesome. There's a lot of stuff that's happening informally. I talked to somebody the other day, and they said, I couldn't accommodate this kid, but I sent him down the road to the community college. You're doing these things all the time. It's wonderful. It's going to continue. And that's just going to be work for you guys. I know times are definitely bringing you a lot more work. We certainly know that. Now, Erica, do you have anything to add, or no, you're good? No? Okay. So what I wanted to do now is there was at least one issue that was a federal concern that came up, and we want to make sure that we cover anything during this session. Erica and I are always available. You can email us, you can call us. You'll definitely get a call back from Erica much more quickly than you'll get a call back from me. But we try to make sure that we're quickly answering and sending you in the right direction. If we don't have the answer, try to help you find it or find the right person. One of the things that has been really, on the federal side is a discussion about campus-based programs and maybe moving funds between programs to help accommodate students. And I think most recently it was moving money between federal work study and SEOG. And there was some movement on the listserv about this. So we wanted to talk a little bit about that today. I think that we're moving into very interesting times again with all the stuff on the federal level. I don't know. Nobody does obviously know what's going to happen. You can hear good things that, maybe we will get funding. And we're just hoping at this point for federal programs to be maintained at their current levels. There's all these little spatterings about, increasing other awards. We don't know. We're just going to take it all as it comes. But just staying on the federal work study to SEOG, I thought that maybe I would just ask one of your colleagues, Patty Noren, who is the director at Nassau. And I know that you guys, many of you know Patty from all the years that she's worked, not just with SUNY, but she also has worked at other campuses. But she's a great colleague. She's your vice president. And because she was on the listserv and had a lot of good information, I think, about movement between SEOG or from federal work study to SEOG. I'm going to ask her to just say a couple of things, if she doesn't mind, putting her right on the spot here. if she doesn't mind just like sort of unmuting and talking a little bit about what she knows on that. Erica, do you have anything to say on that either?
Well, I'll chime in with Patty if she wants
Okay.
me.
That's great. I think this is good because then it's not just me talking. Okay. Patty?
Hi, everybody. How is everybody today? Thank you all for joining us and making time for this meeting. I did reach out to Campus Base and to the G5 team at FSA. I then also went back to NASFA and I called them out on that statement that they had about the debit of funds. Explain to us more. They did get back and they said that the information provided comes directly from the U.S. Department of Education. And per ed, if you draw down your unspent federal work-study funds from G5 directly into your FSEOG account at the institution, then that is when ed considers those funds to be transferred into your SEOG for CARES Act purposes. I then followed up with some scenarios for them just to make sure we were clear. And I gave them the scenario of an allocation of federal work study, $200,000, SEOG, $300,000, and that the institution awarded the $500,000 and we just in SEOG, and we had dispersed $250,000 for fall. I asked, we draw down $50,000 from SEOG, $200,000 from federal work study to pay into our institutional SEOG account for the total amount of $250,000 dispersed to the students. We have now successfully transferred our federal work study funds into our SEOG account by December 31st. Yes. They responded, yes, that is our understanding of ED's guidance. I asked if the drawdown is the debit. Yes. I gave the scenario again, federal work study 200, SEOG 300, dispersing 250 for fall. And if you draw down 150 from your SEOG and 100,000 from federal work study, the school would be left with $100,000 unspent federal work study. You may carry forward the 10% of the allocation, $20,000, but unfortunately, you now have $80,000 unspent federal work study that can only be used toward federal work study pay unless the qualifying emergency is extended. Again, yes, that is our understanding. So I will be formulating all this to put back on the listserv. I had gotten some information from them late last night and then early this morning. So I will put that on the listserv to let you know what they said. Bottom line, it's a communication with your business office and the drawdown process. That's what you really have to work out.
Erica, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I think that, it like the two different examples that Patty sent to them were great because it showed the difference between utilizing most of the SEOG upfront versus the FWS upfront, and like reversing and seeing which one works out for you. So if the national emergency is not extended and you still have the FWS funds, right, then you're kind of stuck with unspent FWS funds if you don't have anybody working in the spring semester. So we're kind of crossing our fingers and hoping the national emergency is extended. Who knows when they'll let us know about that. We're getting pretty close to the end of the semester.
We really are. Patty, that was great. Does anybody, I think we could, if anybody wants to ask a question, we could take it, I guess, in the chat. Is that right? How we do that? Because I know that anything we send out on the listserv, so, Patty, thank you. This is like an example of, how we all need each other because it's like, these are crazy times and we've got to share as much information as we can. It's great when, everybody can take advantage of somebody else's expertise. If anybody wants to ask a question, just jump in. I'm going to move on. Are there any other outstanding federal concerns? I don't see anybody putting anything in the chat. Okay, so I think we're probably pretty good for that.
One
Anything else?
person
Oh,
said, it was my understanding that we could transfer up to 100% of FWS to SEOG for the 2021 year. I didn't think that the 12/31 date was relevant for this. For any of the flexibilities, for many of the flexibilities, it did provide that it was the end of the national emergency or 12/31, whichever one was later. So in this case, for the transfer of funds from FWS to SEOG, right now, that would be 12/31. So you wouldn't be able to transfer 100% of your funds unless you did it ahead of time, but you would have need to award students. Is that your understanding, Patty, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So if you aren't awarding students until you're into the spring term, those SEOG funds, which, you know, I think everybody does this a little bit differently, but I think for the most part, you're normally drawing down those funds in sometime in the spring term. If you're doing that, then, you know, and you still have funds left in your FWS, you can't transfer 100% at this point in time unless they extend the national emergency, unless you are awarding in the fall term before December 31st. Is that your understanding, Patty?
My understanding is it's a lot has to do with the G5 drawdown. That's where it's transferred. It is not on our side. If you're thinking RFI budge and, you know, our side, it
Right.
is G5
Right.
down into the business office side.
Right,
So,
but the funds can't sit in your account.
so you're spending you're drawing down FWS first, work study first, draw that down first.
Right.
Even though you're dispersing SEOG, you're going to draw that down first.
But if you don't do that, then you can't let the funds
be aware, because for an audit, it has to show that it was drawn down there. And that's the FISAP then is going to show how it was managed also as a follow-up.
Right, but if they do it the other way where the FWS is not drawn down first, they can't let those funds sit in their account because of cash management rules.
Correct.
okay, anything else?
We have a couple more questions
this is,
here.
yeah,
Let me see.
this is really good.
Are these all
Sure.
considered emergency SEOG funds?
These are not emergency SEOG's fund. I'm speaking to treating them as your regular SEOG. That's how I addressed it with NASFA and with the department. I addressed it as we want to just transfer 100% of regular SEOG and treat it. And then you follow the regs within the handbook, volume 6, which I did put out on the listserv, that somebody had asked a question, what if you have already drew down SEOG? That's a great question to ask your business office, because I'm looking to see if they drew down anything yet also, and can you return it and then draw down from federal work study? I don't know those answers because we don't work within G5. So this is where you need that communication with your business office.
Okay, there's a question here that says, can we move monies back from FWS to SEOG if we think we may need to use in the spring and nothing is extended? Also, would all the SEOG moved would have to be dispersed by the end of fall 20?
I'm not, I don't know. Can we take these questions and I'll.
That's what I'm thinking. Let's
Yeah.
At the end.
Let's do that.
Yeah.
We'll yeah, I was just going to say.
Yeah, we just need to like process.
Mm-hmm. In fact, that's always a good way to do it. If people want to just put questions into the chat and we can just either discuss, you know, like amongst the group, and we can reach out and we'll get the guidance out to you. Because really too, I do want to be mindful of time. And if there's anything else, what's that? No? Okay. All right, are there anything else? Is there, Erica, anything you want to address now, or should I just move on?
No, you can move on.
Okay, so yeah, like I said, a lot of what is going to be discussed, like in when Lisa Simpson speaks, that's going to be really helpful for you to get that nice focus. And thanks again, Patty and Erica. I wanted to talk to you guys about a couple of other things that are really important enhancements that are going to help you when you're putting together your college, when you're doing your college fairs or you're doing virtual training or whatever. We're always updating Smart Track tools. As you guys know, we have both the high school and college financial literacy websites. We have incorporated in any of our Smart Track efforts. So we've incorporated all of the COVID-19 messaging. This is a really important piece. We want to make sure that whenever we're sending students to an area for resources, that we're making sure that all of the coronavirus pieces are not totally separate, and we've incorporated that into all of our messaging. Those are really important things to have those links available. Also, in our high school site, we have added 3 Spanish fact sheets, and those are really important too. I wanted to mention those because, again, Julietta helped us with those, and we're pleased that those are now available on the high school site. We're trying to, more than ever, we're trying to get students, drive them to the financial literacy tools, whether they're in college or they're in our high school when we're building our community, because those tools have so much information for each, for our students. The high school site focuses specifically on high school issues. We also know that a lot of parents who are Spanish speaking are going to look for those Spanish tools to say, what can I do to help my student, for example. So that's very important. We've also added some additional resources. And one of the examples is a fact sheet on SNAP. You guys know that's the nutrition program that some students are eligible, will be eligible for. But I want to point this out because this is another one of those things that our new chancellor was very big on, helping our students meet their needs in all aspects. So nutrition is so important. Obviously, if you're hungry, you're not going to be able to succeed at school. We all know that. So every campus has food pantries or access to food. Again, the important piece being availability, stigma-free, like no questions asked kind of thing. And SNAP being a program that actually provides resources to buy food in a regular grocery store or whatever. They've expanded that. So some of our college students could potentially, some of you, especially when you're talking about your traditional student or non-traditional, that's enhanced. And we created a fact sheet on that, and that's included in our tools. So I just wanted to go through that and let you know. Reminder of all of our Smart Track tools. You guys, most of you are aware of all these pieces, but we do update them from time to time. We just went through and put some new stuff out there. Again, we get an enormous number of hits, like tens of thousands of hits on these in a quarter, monthly. We would have, 20,000 hits on our different Smart Track tools. What that tells us is that people want to know about financial aid. You're going to know the same thing from your campus as you already do. If you're looking to see how many hits you get on admissions pieces, you also know how many you're getting on financial aid. It's huge. I mean, this is moving us in a direction which I think I've been saying for a while, and I sort of knew that this was going to happen. Because of everything that's going on in the world, we're really getting to a point where people ask, instead of asking first what programs you have, they're asking, how do I pay for it? So it's becoming this really big focus for all of us, which is why we're talking about it with our admissions people so very much. But just to refresh your memory too, the high school site and the college site have all of these different tools. Again, created specifically to assist and support. They're ADA compliant. We've got all kinds of curriculum-based tools out there. I know that many of you use these in the college environment to get, really to help your students maybe practice budgeting and learn more about money. Financial wellness is right up there. You know, you've got the mental, physical, mental, and I would say financial would be the other piece of it, and emotional as well, which is so important. But your emotional health is often tied to how you feel about paying, you know, am I going to be able to pay my bill, all of that stuff. So it's so important. And we're so happy that we have a chancellor that really gets that. The high school side, I wanted to just specifically talk about that because this is an area where your admissions folks are going to be utilizing these tools more and more. We do have the SUNY application linked to this. So we're hoping to drive more students in the direction of SUNY, of course. That's one of our big things. But we definitely want to have the plans for them 9 through 12. So that's an important piece. And obviously FAFSA. We're watching FAFSA completion, and you know, our numbers are lower than they were last year, as you would expect it to be. But we're monitoring that, and we're keeping an eye on that from above, all of that, and seeing where we are. If we see trouble areas, we will certainly do what we can to help on that. I wanted to also point out that you can actually get some tools on the behavior of your students through the financial literacy websites. We do have some tools that have videos to show you how to use it, and we're utilizing this more in the high schools, as I said. These are going to be really good because if you wanted to use it as a lesson plan for something, some of you do it when you have a student who wants to take out a private loan, or you know, you might want to be able to just run registration to see, I told all of this group of students that they were supposed to take a budgeting class. Did they do that? They can also do that in the high schools, which is really, I think, really a great thing. In addition to that, we have marketing pieces. You know, last year for Financial Aid Awareness Month, we were able to send tools and resources out to the campuses in the form of like brochures and, you know, that kind of stuff, promotional pieces from our vendor. This year was so messed up because April was the gone month for all of us. We still have some of those tools available, and we probably will be getting those out to the campuses. I don't think those have been mailed yet, but we're utilizing those at in high schools, at EOCs. So we're really out and about trying to really promote. And if you need those tools or those marketing pieces, those are available on the website as also. Wanted to talk about the financial aid plan. Erica works with our task force on an annual basis to make sure that we're, you know, compliant on the state side, because of course, as everyone knows, we created a financial aid award letter many years ago as a system. And some of you on the call are people who were on that first initial rollout of that. But each year we take a look, do we need to make changes? The state adopted our plan pretty much with some minor differences. And then every year we roll it out, take a look, does something need to be changed? Are we good to go? And I know that Erica works, Shirley Clark from the SICA Center is also a participant in that. So Erica, did you have anything to add on that? Are we good on that?
Hold on, sorry. I'm muted. Okay, I thought I was muted. No, the task force, we met informally, of course, this year via email, and there were no changes for the coming year. So I just want to share that.
Okay, great. So the next thing I wanted to give you guys an update on is re-enroll to complete. You're all very familiar with this, I hope. But I just wanted to include a couple of screens on that because I'm going to share some stats with you. Re-enroll to complete really started with you guys. We had an idea and we went to campuses and said, I think we need to start doing some targeted communications to our withdrawn student loan borrowers. Our concern initially was that they were going into default potentially, and we were losing students. And we know once a student starts slipping down that slippery slope, it's very difficult to bring them back. And the more time that goes on, frankly, the less chance that they'll come back. So when we're talking about student loan borrowers, they've made a significant investment, they've borrowed money. We want to make sure that they're getting the bang for their buck, so we're supporting them. What came out of this really started to be sort of a default avoidance or prevention activity. it ended up really kind of being much more than that. So we're at a point now where we're re-enrolling, retaining, and we're also promoting good student loan repayment behavior. When we first did our pilot, we had 17 campuses, and we were very happy that we were able to get out of that initial pilot. 20% of our students were coming back, and the vast majority were re-enrolling at SUNY. So our goal with that was to working, really, it's almost like a side by side. When a student withdraws officially from your campus, if they're a student loan borrower, you have to report them to the National Student Loan Data System. At the same time, excuse me, as that information is updated with NSLDS, their federal student loan servicer starts contacting them. So the federal student loan servicer gives them messages about, repayment. They're not really paid to get students back into school. But what we know is if a student completes, they're much more likely to be able to repay their student loan regardless of how much they borrowed. So because we knew that, what we ended up, really focusing in on those students that we could communicate with during their in-grace period. Now, I know I've said this to folks before, the re-enrollment rate for your typical borrower getting your standard in-grace is less than 1%. It's like really less than 0.5%. So it's like 0.5% of the students go back to school, which is counterintuitive because at the end of the day, that's where we know the real success comes in, right? And it makes sense. First of all, because they won't end up in our default cohort. Most importantly, they're going to graduate. We want them to graduate. If they come in and they stay, they'll be successful. And then they'll be a student loan, repayer in a positive way. So it's a feel good, but it also makes a lot of sense. So once we got through that, we were able to get funding to expand. So we had an initial 29 campuses. We're now up to 52. And I can tell you that our first year income or outcomes were, excuse me, right in line with our pilot at about 20%. In the past year, we've been in production since March of 2018. We've actually increased our outcomes to 28% across the system at our 52 campuses. I actually have one pending. So we're going to be getting up to probably 53 campuses within the next few weeks. So I bring this up because, again, as everyone is talking about enrollment, this is the kind of thing that is so crucial because we looked at the bigger piece here. It was students need to stay on campus in order to be successful. We know that. Well, what works? How do we get them to stay? Financial aid plays a huge part in that because so many of our students are student loan borrowers. It makes sense that is exactly where we would go first to try to help these students who have made this commitment. Nothing more heartbreaking, excuse me, than seeing a student who only borrowed a small amount of money, went to school for one semester, and then ultimately ends up in delinquent or default status. I know that it's everybody's problem, but it's particularly difficult for financial aid folks when they see that. That's very challenging. I've spoken to so many of you about this when we're looking at Smart Track. You don't want to just be the person who's processing financial aid. You understand what's behind it. And so that's why you've all been able to get behind this effort. More and more our enrollment people are getting it. They're understanding it. So I wanted to just tell you where we are now. As I said, we've got 52 campuses. One is pending. We've added student engagement to our messaging to our re-enrolled students, which has been extremely helpful, and that has increased retention for our students. So we're very happy about that. We also included our COVID-19 messaging. It wouldn't make any sense for me to be speaking to your students and telling them to go to campus to do something when everybody was sent home. So we had to kind of pivot on that. I want to assure you that we did that. I don't want anybody to think that we're just sending crazy messages to students. That's not the case at all. One of our partners in this very strong is Jim Trimboli at Niagara County Community College. So I want to give a shout out to Jim because he's one of the people that I've commiserated with over the last few years about, these students a student who borrows $1,000 and ends up in a delinquent status. It's like, oh no, we need you to get back on campus you might need to borrow more money, but you're going to complete. We got to keep you there. Jim has really helped us with our messaging. We work with a lot of people to make sure that our messaging is in line because it's that whole nudge communications, where we're we're getting right there, in their face and kind of telling them what we need them to do. Everybody here knows that retaining students is not always easy, especially some of our most at-risk students. So a really good partner for us in this has been Niagara. And what we're doing right now, we just started, is we're reaching out to our non-borrowers with some targeted outreach. And we did one message to those non-DL borrowers from Niagara. And we're really, really pleased, really pleased. And we think this is going to be super successful. Excuse me. And if it is, we're going to continue to offer that across the system. Really, this came from Chancellor Johnson. She loved re-enroll, of course. There's really no downside to it. But getting students back to campus is a great thing to do. And it's a very important priority. She said to us, well, what about the non-student loan borrowers? And as a financial aid person, I always worry about the student loan borrowers first, of course. And they're the group that I have the most access to. Because it's an automated process with the student loan borrowers, because all of the information about that student resides on the National Student Loan Data System, we can do that automatically. That is an electronic transaction. Getting information from the campus on the non-DL non-DL students is a little bit different. So Jim had to work with his IT folks to create a file that could be sent to our vendor so that we can begin the discussions, our outreach, electronic discussions with our students. So I'll keep you posted on that. Jim also and his team at Niagara worked with Mike Williams, who many of you know works part-time for us. Well, actually, he's been working crazy hours like the rest of us, but he works as our project coordinator for Smart Track, and he works very closely with our vendor and with our campuses, and he and I head up this project together. And Niagara came up with a really great website. That's a great landing page.
So annoying.
And that landing page really helps us to push a student in the direction of where you want them to go at the campus. So I wanted to bring that up because Jim is certainly willing to share that. And, we spoke with Jim and his president and his leadership team earlier this week. They're very happy that we're moving in this direction. This is another example of getting our arms around our students and helping them. So I think what we'll do is we're going to do a webinar and show you, some of these tools and the website. And I'll tell you, you're going to see a difference if you have this place to really bring your students back to. So I want to give a plug and a thank you to Jim on that. And thanks to all of our participating campuses. Here are quickly, just to wrap up, here are the stats that we have currently. So since the program began in March of 2018, we've reached out to 57,525 students. Now remember, these are just student loan borrowers. These are students who have officially withdrawn from one of the participating campuses, and you, campus folks, have reported them as out of school in your national student loan data, in the National Student Loan Data System. There's no other way for me to get that information. So if you have a student who comes in and says, I got this note and I don't know why I got a note from somebody, I'm enrolled. That's what's good, because you want to tell them, wait a minute, I guess I must have reported you as out of school. So because it's automated, there's really the margin for error is pretty limited here. So you're telling the National Student Loan Data System, the students out of school, because you are seeing it on your system. I would suggest, and I'm going to stress this in our webinar, take a look at when you're reporting to NSLDS, because keep in mind, even though you have time to report, and obviously you might not report every 30 days for a variety of reasons, there are requirements by the federal, the federal government has their requirements. I would also say that it's really important for you to remember that if you don't know that your student left, and sometimes students just walk away, they're not going to be getting any messaging from the Federal Student Loan Servicer or from SUNY under re-enroll, which means they could already be almost all the way through their grace period and have gotten no information. So that's another thing that contributes to delinquency and default. So when we start looking at that, that's a really important piece to this, reporting on time. And I can look now at all of the reporting that I get from the vendor, and it tells me when you're reporting, so I can see. I've reached out to some of you. If there seems to be a problem with your reporting, like you're not doing it in a timely manner, that kind of stuff. But just because you haven't heard from me doesn't mean you shouldn't look at it. So take a look and discuss it. That's something that we'll pull apart this program and be doing a webinar, because there's a lot more interest in it as we go through into these really tough times. But as you can see, the majority of students do go back to SUNY. There's value in it, even if they don't go back to SUNY. There's value in doing this if a student goes to your campus, takes out a student loan, we get them to go back and they go back to Siena or wherever. If they do go into a delinquent or default status, that's not your, at that point, that's really off of your cohort. It's not going to be in your cohort. So it makes a lot of sense. And let's face it, at the end of the day, all we really care about is getting these students across the stage. We got to get them across the stage. That's going to position them better to be able to repay the student loan. So I just want to give you these little bullet points. Our retention rate is at 88%, right? This is incredible. We're doing a great thing. And I think it's because, again, the continuity of the messaging, we're doing it at targeted times. We know the messaging. We give different messages throughout their in-grace period. And we are also now doing student engagement so that when a student comes back, we're continuing to communicate with them. So that's where you can see on this where we still have 11,300 who have stayed in school after coming back. So we get them in and we keep them in. That's the really important part. Other thing I want to mention to you is that because the majority of them are continuing at the campus that they withdrew from, that's really good news. If they leave Nassau, I'll use Patty as an example. If they left Nassau and we're collecting the reasons for that, which we've shared with you in reports in the past, and we're going to continue to do more of that in the future. If they say the reason why they left was because of money or it was a personal reason or something, that wasn't because they didn't like Patty Noren, right? You know, oh, the financial aid office was terrible. No, we're not seeing those reasons. And believe me, if I see it, I will let you know. What we do on an annual basis is send you the information about what your students are saying. I will say this, we're a little delayed in getting that to you because of COVID. It's been crazy, as you can imagine, you guys, and would you really have time to take a look at it anyway? Right now, we're at about 74%. So we've lost some students because of COVID, which we all knew was going to happen. The important piece, though, is to remember we're going to continue this and we're going to expand as much as we can. So at this point, over 66 million in tuition has been recovered. When we do that, when we look at how much we've recovered, we look at how many went back full-time? Did they go to a state op? Did they go to a community college? Did they take 3 credits, 9 credits, whatever they took? We're gauging that and we're using the information on the tuition. What I'm not including is any of the other costs. So if you bring a student back and they're living in the dorms, you're also getting that revenue. Again, this revenue doesn't come into system administration because we're sending those students right back to you. So this is good news. We had recognition from the provost that, gosh, I don't know what we would be doing if we weren't doing re-enroll at this point, because we're trying to just pull these students back. It works in conjunction with everything you're already doing on your campus. So we're not stepping on anybody's toes. It's just an enhancement to that. So that's really good news. I really hope that we're going to be able to get more, folks mobilized on what kind of infrastructure we can build around this. So I think that given that we're now working with Niagara on the non-student loan borrowers and potentially other cohorts of students, we're going to be able to gauge things a lot as we move forward. So again, stay tuned on this. Any questions? I think I stayed pretty close to my time. I might have gone a little over. Anything that anybody else has a question or wants to add? Anything? No?
I just want to say thank you so much, Patty, and for what you and Erica do. And there are some questions that are still left unanswered, but like you said, you can get to those later, possibly.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely, Rebecca. I want to keep you guys on track. And what we'll do is we're going to be on, we'll be here throughout the day. I know you've got a lot of presentations and it's going to be a nice solid day. So best of luck with everything here, and we'll be on. We'll be here. And I do a lot of this. This is what my son does in remote learning. Like if everybody goes, is everybody okay? We all just go. So
Perfect.
if there's anything that anybody needs from me, though, just let me know. Okay. Otherwise, thanks so much for listening to me this morning, and best of luck with everything, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.
I'll sign off. I'm gonna unshare here so that you can put something else up if I can do it right.
Doing great. So yeah, and I did want to mention that there might be a few minutes around the lunchtime, or when people can just feel free to talk and ask any of these questions with each other. I mean, we don't have to take a lunch break, that type of thing. I'm going to leave that pretty informal for people. But next, if she's ready, we are excited to have Shirley Clark give her update from the SECA Center today. And I think that Jeff is helping with Shirley's sharing of the presentation.
Yes, I'm ready. I think Jeff is going to start.
Okay, yep, I'll get that up in just a second.
Thank
Perfect.
you, Patty and Erica. It's always interesting to find out what system is working on the behalf of financial aid. I thought this layout looked a little appropriate for the times that we were in. Most of our meetings remote and through Teams or Zoom. I hope everybody knows who I am, or most people, but we do have a lot of new faces. I'm Shirley Clark. I'm the product manager at the SECA Center and for the Banner campuses. I support you. This is our agenda for today. I'll go over SECA's general information, followed by the Ellucian Financial Aid Roadmap. We'll talk about the financial aid data submission, the Graduate Diversity Fellowship Program, CARES Act grants, emergency SEOG grants, the new SUNY Pathway Scholars Award Program, and SECA's projects and handling winter intercession in Banner. So some general information. I always like to go over some important key dates of conferences that we used to have in the past in person. Maybe someday in the future we will. It was announced just recently that eLive will be virtual from April 12th to the 14th in 2021. I'm assuming the DegreeWorks portion will be virtual as well. That's why I have question marks. I haven't heard about that, but that is always another forum that a lot of folks like to send their folks to, because we were all using the DegreeWorks software to look at outcomes for our students and how they're progressing along with their programs. SECA Summit was supposed to be in Niagara Falls. We'll be making a decision by January 2021. It will be sometime in September. Those dates may change if it's virtual again. Thank you all who presented this past virtual SECA Summit. Those dates shifted to October, and we held it during a week-long period, actually 2 weeks, I think. We had different sessions going on, and thanks to everybody, Brian Smith, Devin Dignol, Rob Zazzo, everybody who submitted presentations. It was a wonderful turnout. And we've recorded the sessions. We will be making them available once they have been gone through. We like to do closed captioning on them, and we will be putting them out. Cohesion Summit is posted as being in Reno, Nevada. This is a smaller user group for Banner folks. And I always like to promote this session because it's less commercialized by Ellucian. So you're not, just seeing the Ellucian products. You're seeing other campuses give demonstrations on how they've worked around problems or things that they needed to accomplish in Banner. And this is posted as being October 17th through the 20th in 2022. So keep that in mind and keep that in your pocket. Some general information. Brian Smith from SUNY Cobleskill is your financial aid FOG chair. Henry Heather from Hudson Valley Community College is your alternate FOG chair. So if you ever have anything that you want to discuss with them, they're open to hearing your concerns at any given time. We had some recent SECUS releases go out in the end of October that you should be aware of and that you should be requesting to get them installed in your system as soon as possible. SECUS General 8.12.S, SECUS Student 8.20.S, and SECUS Financial Aid 8.38.S. Okay, for Ellucian's roadmap in the third quarter, which we're currently in, they are delivering the College Scholarship Service Early Decision Annual Update for early decision processing, and the 2021 EDE processing. That all came out in Financial Aid 839. They implemented annual changes to support institutional and federal methodology calculations for 2021-22, the California DREAM Act data load, and implement newly redesigned Banner 9 self-service applications. They're trying to make them more better and more of an intuitive experience to the students. Fourth quarter, they're going to deliver annual transfer monitoring federal updates to monitor students who previously received aid at another institution. Now this one, next bullet is kind of important, and I'll discuss it later. They're going to provide administrative users the ability to return to Title IV using student-centric periods across student accounts receivable and financial aid. I want you to keep that in focus because we're going to discuss that later in the process, because if you're using Banner and you're using, you have winter intersessions, it's kind of very important. Student-centric periods keep popping up, and they will continue to keep popping up, and we're not going to be able to ignore them for very long. But it's really not the financial aid area that may be ignoring them. Implementing the college financing plan to accommodate any regulatory changes in the fourth quarter, and providing annual updates to support the California DREAM Act data load. Next slide. First quarter 2021, they're going to implement your Pell schedules for 21-22 to meet any regulatory requirement changes that are approved by Congress for the Pell schedules. And they're also going to provide 2021 Common Origination Disbursement support for any new schema that comes out. And although not on the financial aid roadmap, and I don't know why they didn't put it on the roadmap, Ellucian is in the process of converting the rest of their COBOL processes to Java. This is a big undertaking for them, and big concern, you know, that once they release this works appropriately. One of the big processes is the disbursement process, RPE-DISB. So they were looking for beta sites. If you haven't, and you do have time, you know, you can reach out to Ellucian. I think Michelle Engel was looking for beta campuses. The financial aid data submission this year for the 2019-20 reporting cycle, you had to make sure that you had the new codes that system was requesting in place before you submitted. Code number 33 was designated for Graduate Diversity Fellowship Program. The code of 62 was for CARES Act grant funding, the student portion. 63 was for emergency SEOG grant funding. And code number 70 although we'll be reporting it on next year's financial aid data submission, we had that in early for some early reporting if they could grab it in other serious reporting products. So we asked you to crosswalk that early if you could, but if you couldn't, they'll get that data later. So. There were a series of patches that went out for the financial aid data submission. They're all listed here. Most of these had to deal with contracts and exemptions. We finally added that piece into the financial aid data submission. There were campuses that were using contracts and exemptions heavily, while other campuses weren't using them at all. I believe it was the newer campuses on Banner that were using them heavily, like Empire State. And so there were a series of patches. I'm not going to read through them all, but they're listed there. It's just important to note that once you've loaded one of the releases that we had, the financial aid 8.38.S release, that you may have to load after patches, because if you were loading the patches along, so like 838.0.1.P is an after patch that brings you up to 837.0.29P. So, you know, anything that comes out after 838 that has an 838.01 or higher is after the financial aid, the SECA's financial aid release of 838S. The Graduate Diversity Fellowship Program stirred up a little discussion with SECAS and System, because when Josh Horn sent out his announcement extending the deadline for the FAD submission to November 1st, he kind of said, you know, to report the stipend portion of this program as well. I had several campuses contact me immediately because they were reporting previously to system administration using spreadsheets on these programs. And these programs consist of payments for the stipend portion as well as the tuition award portion, which covers the amount of tuition. So after our discussion with system administration, it was deemed that they should only report through FADS at this point through Banner, our Banner schools, to report the tuition award portion through the FADS, to continue using their spreadsheet because we were unable to pull out the stipend portion directly in Banner because it was paid directly through human resources or other processes that we could not grab that data information. Also, not only with the Graduate Diversity Fellowship Program, but other programs like the Youth College Initiative for EOP, they're giving them stipends during periods that are not in their cost of attendance. And system administration would have to update their system to allow reporting of awards that didn't coincide with the terms in their cost of attendance. And that's currently not in place, and it would cause errors on the system side. So we're continuing to discuss with system administration on reporting stipends and other things that they may have to update their system to get. You know, I guess the ultimate goal is not to be reporting back and forth through spreadsheets, but to be able to, in the future, pull this out of a system and report it back, which obviously is always the goal, you know, to make reporting easier. But right now, campuses should continue to send spreadsheets. The CARES Act funding, the student portion, they're not considered federal Title IV aid, and therefore these grants should not be considered estimated financial aid in a student's award package. That means they can't be a fund code or a resource that reduced needs in Banner. And I sent out previous information over the lists with all different methods of being able to apply these funds directly on the account side, bypassing financial aid. I may have had one or two campuses that didn't listen. Not too pleased with those decisions because I don't understand not being able to disperse through the accounts receivable side. Next. So one of the options you could use was a third-party contract, and making sure the contract was not listed as included as a resource on RPR. You can exclude it as a financial aid resource so it doesn't reduce need. For a third-party contract, you also need a non-person SPRIDE and ID, so it becomes a little bit more complicated, and you also need a charge and detail code. Institution could use exemptions, but they also had to make sure the exemption is excluded as a resource on the exemption form, RPR EXPT. That only needed a payment detail code, so that was a good method to use. Institution could apply funds using TSA detail, completely bypassing the financial aid process, and it only needed a payment detail code. That was a great option too. Institution could also apply funds using the accounts receivable mass entry form, TSA mass, which takes a detail code, an amount code, and a term code, and it would apply it to all students entered. The student amount could be changed to a different amount before saving. So if you had students receiving different amounts, but a general amount for the majority of them, you could then go in and change it and before saving the data. This was a really nice method that Sue Anderson from Old Westbury suggested. Or you could upload the transactions if you had a lot of computer support, which many campuses did. They could use the TB underbar receivable API that Ellucian delivered. And there was an article number out there on Ellucian Hub that your technical support people could read, because you probably have to tweak it a little bit for what you're doing. And also SUNY Oneonta shared the code that they wrote on the SECAS website under Camp Code. So a lot of people were chipping in with their solutions. I'd like to discuss a little bit about the institutional portion. Institutions can apply funds to students directly from the institutional portion. That is one of the options that you're allowed to do. At this point, I would say use a different detail code from the student portion, because although we tried to report the student portion in the FADS reporting this year, there were many campuses that still had remaining funds even after FADS was submitted that they're trying to disperse through in the student portion. Now, the institutional portion, of course, there was a lot of back and forth whether this could go to your DACA students and stuff like that. The last FAQ said they're not checking, so if it went there, you're okay. There was a lot of up and down about that in the institutional portion. Definitely create a different detail code if you give any funds to students, and don't allow anybody from your administration to convince you that any of the student portion or the institutional portion should appear on the financial aid side at all as a resource or reduced need. Just, you know, it does not belong there. So emergency SEOG funds. I was in contact with Ellucian because they didn't offer a great solution of awarding this money in Banner, especially not for our SUNY schools, which act as a system, and we report back to system administration. Their solution was to inflate the cost of attendance, and we were told that we shouldn't be doing that because everything you report as the cost of attendance goes into information for the net price calculator, and it just was not a good option. And we couldn't get Ellucian to budge on creating us a method where we could override everything just to get this money on. And, you know, there's just not a good solution for SUNY schools. So it was a difficult thing. There was a solution that you could put it on using batch posting with bypassing validation. But once you do that, you can't touch the award package anymore because it just, you'll run into issues. But that's the only method to get it on there without reducing need or inflating cost of attendance. So next. And this is the solution of using FPN for batch posting. So I already went over that. This was the solution, the only solution for our SUNY schools. And again, if you have to make adjustments after the fact, you can contact Ellucian, submit a ticket through them, because it just really, if you need to touch anything else to make a change at that point. But hopefully if you award these funds, it would be the last funds that you award in Banner, and you won't have to make any more changes after that. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, the new SUNY Pathways Scholars Award. This program was designed for students to complete an associate's or bachelor's degree in 2 to 4 years, respectively. Sounds familiar? Like Excelsior almost. So to qualify, the students must have graduated from high school with an average of at least 80% and enroll full-time in a community college or a college of technology. They receive a total of $500 in the first year, $250 the first semester, and if remaining good academic standing, $250 in the second semester, and then $1,000 when enrolled in a SUNY bachelor degree program. These awards will reduce financial needs, so they should be set up as a fund code or a resource code that do reduce financial need. Not sure how payments are going to work yet. Haven't heard any information about that at this time. Here are some of the SECUS projects that we've completed over the last year. We created a CSV file for the ROPY SSL report, which is the last report that comes out of the SSL process. The users were asking for that for quite some time, which makes it much nicer to sort, and it puts control in your users' hands. Once you run that piece, you can sort by error message or anything of that nature. We delivered the initialization of the TAP estimator in patch 837.0.6.p. But if you loaded financial aid 838.s, you'll have that in there. So please do that as soon as possible, so you're all ready for your awarding for 21-22. We delivered the initial FADS updates. Like I said, there were plenty of other little patches that went out after the initial. We also worked on changes to track students impacted by COVID-19 that you were reporting to HESC as impacted by COVID-19. We wanted to make sure that all the SECUS applications that you use would actually reflect that status. Now, since there is no file transfer between your campus and HESC with that information, you do have to list it in Banner as an attribute, as well as marking it on the HESC side through the HESC web, because it does not transfer over automatically through any of our processes. And for those of you new, that's important to know at this time. So you have to make the changes on HESC web as well as recording them in Banner. Our processes maintain that record, but there's no way to report it directly to HESC. But all of our processes will display that information. We just got done completing a patch that will be going out shortly. I think the patch is 838.0.3p, which will pen students that are marked impacted by COVID because of the fact that this was still up in the air on the HESC side once you mark them. So we did complete that. Brian Smith submitted that request to SECUS on your behalf. The financial aid plan was also delivered, the SUNY financial aid plan. We did DREAM Act changes to the manifest files to use Campus ID. I believe we're completed with all of that work from moving to Social Security number to Campus ID for all the HESC file transfer processes. And we also completed changes for the college financing plan, which is used by our non-SUNY campuses. We also handled lower division to upper division TAP code changes within the year. That is one of the process, the grouping process that occurs when you load the student status listing. We identify which code, TAP code they should be in automatically, but HESC stopped taking those file maintenance changes, so you can't automatically send them at this point. But if they ever do again, we're ready to send them. Some of the new projects we're working on, 2020-015, an update SOT call to DegreeWorks for the new version. Sometimes when DegreeWorks comes out with a new version of software, we have to update our software so calls go through smoothly. It's more technical than anything else, but it has to be a project that we have to work on. And then the next project is 2019-07, end a cohort when the program of study is finished. We wanted to provide a way for you to end the cohort easier in Banner than what you have out there now, which is nothing. And we want to make sure that we get that in our manual, because I was very concerned when we were talking about the project on one of our calls and somebody said, "Whoa, we have to end the cohort." The cohort controls them getting the reduced tuition amount. So we'll be working on that. This is a sample of the page that we're working at. And from all the notes I took from our previous meetings with our users, they mentioned they'd like to see the degree code and the degree status. If there is no degree code on the Shaw-Degger form, we'll pull in the degree code from the general student record. The duration of the degree, we'll try to put what we can find out from there, similar to the way it functions on your award plan sheets, your financial aid plan, or your award information plan sheets. And the way it works for your RAPA-SUI records when you're reporting 150% SULA tracking. So, and if they are in an opportunity program, we're going to add an extra year to the duration because EOP students have that extra year to complete their program. If they're ADA disabled, we're gonna give you that information as well because it may take them longer. We're gonna list the first matric term on this page and the term the cohort was first created, and the future term if there are no changes. But if there are changes and the cohort was inactivated in a future term, so you'll be using the cohort code and the term code to enter this page. And as we advance and develop further, you can actually end it. We're hoping that we'll provide a mechanism so you can click to end the cohorts on certain students that you deem should be ended at this point in time. Just, okay. Next, no, that's fine. Next, handling winter intercession and banner. I wanted to discuss that because I discussed this a long time ago in one of my presentations, and it seems to come up again. And because of the projects that Lucian is working on, I wanted to go over it again. If you have a winter intercession, in certain limited cases, you are able to combine that winter intercession with either your fall or your spring. And most of our campuses do that. Because if you don't combine your winter intercession with either fall or spring, you have to kind of handle your whole program as a Formula 3 program and a B-Bay for loans and all of that stuff, which is very complicated as opposed to a standard term semester. So if you combine it with either fall or spring, then you're still meeting the regulations and you count the enrollment with that winter to your fall or spring. Next slide. So you do that by adding the winter to the fall or spring on ROR PRDS. And you make sure that the satisfactory academic progress term is the minimum term in that period, and that both the accounts receivable and the student term are set to either the fall or spring, whichever one you're combining with winter. This period that you create is going to be used for all students for their federal processing in all their aid periods. You are going to create a separate period for just fall or spring on ROR periods. A lot of our campuses create that separate period and they append it with an S for state processing because you cannot include the remote enrollment for state processing, especially if you're charging a separate fee for those winter courses. It's not considered a simulated semester by state education department. It has to be approved too. And usually you can only charge one tuition. So if you're charging separately, that's the big key to tell you it's not a simulated semester, that you can't count that enrollment in winter towards your fall or spring enrollment for state aid purposes. So that state aid period is placed on STVY, TTY, and Banner. Usually they put an S on it, and that's where we pick up enrollment for all of your certification of state awards. So here's a scenario. Student A is enrolled in 3 credits for the winter intercession, and this institution combines winter with spring, and student A is also enrolled in 3 credits in the spring semester. Now, if you're not using student-centric periods in Banner, the National Student Clearinghouse reporting is going to incorrectly report this student as less than half time in Banner. If your registrar did move to student-centric period and combine those 2 periods because you're combining it in financial aid, and I know they like to ignore what goes on in financial aid, but they really can't, and you have to communicate because if you're doing it this way, you have to have them move in the same direction. Banner has updated the National Student Loan Clearinghouse process to use student-centric periods. So when you combine that for that student, it's going to report that student as half-time. And then they're not going to kick out for repayment on their student loans. And again, I'm letting you know that Banner is also in the process of updating that R2T4 to combine for student-centric periods. SECUS isn't going to be handling it. Nobody else is going to be handling it. Lucian is handling it, but you have to be using student-centric periods. So have that conversation with your registrar if you are combining them. It's time. I'll entertain any questions at this point, and I really want everybody to have a happy Thanksgiving. Are there any questions in the chat that I'm not seeing?
Hi, Shirley. Thank you so much for all that you do. I see one question in the chat right now. We currently attached our winter to fall. I'm thinking to change it to attach to spring. Do I need to do anything besides making changes in ROR PRDS? This
Yep.
will be in 21-22.
You would change ROR PRDS to link it to the spring. Make sure that you create a spring only too on ROR PRDS to put on STVY TTY, but that's the only place you would switch it. It's really that simple, because all of your aid periods are going to take that term. It's not complicated at all.
We have another question. If you charge for winter term separately, does this mean we cannot link our winter to spring?
No, I mean, absolutely you can link your winter to spring. It means that you have to create a separate period that just includes spring, put an S after it, so let's say your period for spring is 2021-02. And you created a period called 2021-02, and you have your spring period, which is 2021-02 and 2021-01 with your winter. So you have two terms in there. That's going to be used for all your federal aid processing, but then you're going to create a separate one called 21-02S that just contains your spring term. You're going to put that on STVY TTY. So when you process all of your state aid, we're just looking at the spring term for enrollment purposes.
Okay, and then somebody has stated that we charge winter separately, but financial aid is combined with spring. So not a question, she's just explaining that's how they are doing it.
That's fine. But like I said, make sure you have a separate period code on STVY TTY that does not contain that winter term in the period.
Okay, that looks like that's it in chat. I mean, people are, if you want to unmute yourself and ask questions, that's also fine right now. But I don't see anything more in chat. Must be you've covered everything, Shirley.
Thank you all so much. And remember, if you have any questions or problems, please submit a ServiceNow incident. Do not email individuals directly at SECUS. Thanks.
Thank you. And there were questions about these presentations being available to everyone. I will work on getting those to people afterwards, but this is being recorded. So we have a few minutes before our next person, unless Osei, you wanted to start early. I'm not sure if you're on right now.
It's, whatever the group desires. If you wanted a break, or I can just roll right through, whatever the group wants.
Well, how about you go ahead and roll on through, and that way maybe we'll have time afterwards between lunch and our 1 o'clock, if that's okay with you, Osei.
I'm fine. Absolutely.
Thank you so much for being here. And for those of you who don't know, Osei, I hope I don't get your last name wrong, Jose Agerman.
Ajiman. Close.
Oh, thank you, Ajiman. I knew it. Foster Youth College Success Initiative Coordinator and Campus Liaison. That took 2 lines for me to get that in there. At SUNY Office of Opportunity Programs. Thank you so much for being here, and it's nice to meet you today.
No problem, no problem. Thank you for having me. I just want to say I appreciate you all. It's nice scrolling through and seeing all the names. I've communicated with a lot of you via email and everything, and it's always been, very pleasant. And you can feel through the keyboard just the concern and the care for, our students, and it's rewarding to me to see that. So going through kind of some of the newer folks who've not seen the presentation, I don't want to take for granted that everybody has heard the earlier portion. So I'll just go through and then just kind of roll through some of the changes, what's new and everything. But just to get in the frame of mind of a youth in care, this pandemic has brought out so much, in anybody. There's so many different factors and everything, but think about going through the pandemic and you're transitioning out of care, attending college. It's actually, nothing short of a miracle that foster youth has made that transition to go to college, because only about 3.5% graduate with a college degree, a bachelor's degree. So, and 70% have a desire to go. So imagine trying to pursue that goal, dealing with a pandemic. So, what's some of the stresses? What's some of the deals with transitioning out of care? So, the stress of transitioning out of care, the transition plans and going through that with your caseworker, and what's the next step for you? And you're going to college, and where do I go to college? Will I be able to travel? Am I staying on campus? Some of the obstacles, mental health, physical health, the isolation. Can I deal with isolation? And some have been confronted with it, early in the semester, as far as the isolation. They've already felt the feeling of abandonment. And now, on a campus, everybody's isolated, may have to return home. So there's a lot of different factors that affect mental health. So, it's not a issue. It's not really an issue of if, but it's when, because this affects the regular person. Imagine a foster youth. So you have housing insecurity during breaks. And as you know, it's quite different this year. And we can go to the next bullets. And financial barriers, which we'll talk about. And we can go to the next one. Technology access, which is huge. Thankfully, we had someone, donate some laptops for some youth in care, which was amazing. And food security is also, an issue. All right. And of course, undeniably that parental guardian support, the lack thereof is huge, because this is a time when you need as much support as possible. All right. So just to go through a little bit of the history of, the Foster Youth College Success Initiative. It predated me coming on board. This initiative came about in 2015, specifically for students who have experienced foster care, eligible orphans, and wards of the court. Now, because foster youth is in the name, it doesn't necessarily limit it to youth. We've had 40-year-olds, 40-plus-year-olds take advantage of this because they fit the criteria for being a former foster youth. This award is awarded to 3 different sectors, SUNY, the privates, and CUNY. Each one of us functions a little differently, SUNY and CUNY, we kind of have some similarities, but it's a little different. Of course, our systems are very different. We have 64 campuses. Um, so we have quite larger volume of institutions. So we can go to the next slide. Everybody can kind of read and see everything already. So, sometimes I'm asked, what do these funds assist with? Of course, tuition and fees, books, meals, transportation, housing, inclusive of recess housing, all right, which we'll talk about a little later. On-campus tutoring that's not covered by the campus. If it's covered by the campus, we don't want to use the funds for something that's already covered by the campus. Personal expenses. That's why, I've talked to some of you before about, that COA formula as far as personal expenses. They kind of extend a little further for a youth who's in care of what they have to take care of. And then personal expenses, it includes medical expenses, but we just put it there just for everybody to see, primary care, behavioral health, vision, and so these are the eligibility requirements. It pretty much follows a lot of the federal regulations. I know that many of you are familiar with that. Adopted from foster care after the 13th birthday. Also, as far as the orphan status works very similar. Also the student, another caveat, New York resident for at least 1 year or received a high school diploma in New York. Okay. So these are just some of the highlights. You can kind of read it later. I know this is being recorded, so you can kind of run through some of the PowerPoint later. You have access to it. Okay, so the process, I know some of you who've been doing this for some time, it changes every year, doesn't it? I know, sometimes I'm in the middle juggling everything about these changes. You're working with major institutions, with OCFS and SED, and it has to, work cyclical and, maneuvering and reaching these students. So in 2021, we had the required OCFS consent form, which was only used to verify new foster youth students. Okay, only the new. So if you had, some of you received the email, if you had students who were in care, have received funding in the past, you would just, send your roster, you put it in the previous tab and then the new, all right? And students who have received funding in the past will not have to be verified again. If they received funding before and they were deemed eligible the prior year, they will not have to go through that process again as far as submitting a consent form. I know some of you have submitted rosters, and not everybody, the roster that I got back to you with didn't have some of on the newer column, didn't have all of the students in the newer column. It's because either they didn't complete a consent form or they were deemed ineligible. All right. If I reached out to you earlier, I was able to share with a lot of you who's ineligible, and then you had the opportunity to appeal the process, which is providing documentation to OCFS. I don't verify, OCFS verifies. I'm just kind of the middle person. And then I receive the list back, and then I communicate with you all who was deemed eligible or not. They have their system. They run through the state system. If the student is there, they're deemed eligible. If it's not, they are deemed ineligible, which leads me to the last bullet. Orphans are eligible for the initiative, but some have come up ineligible because they're not in OCFS's system. They wouldn't have them there, but they may require for, they will likely, if you're communicating that this student is eligible and you have documentation, it doesn't knock them not being eligible. You would just let me know. So we had a few in that category this year. That's why there was some, disparities, but we were able to come back and fix it. I want to also touch on something as far as the rosters that you all submitted with the consent form. The rosters, like I said, I get back from OCFS of who's eligible and who's ineligible. If you had somebody on a roster that did not complete a form, or they received funding last year and they were not on OCFS this year. Some of you have communicated with me to share, wait a minute, this student received funding last year. Why are they not on this year? If they, like I said, once eligible, always eligible. If it's verified that they received funding last year, then we will get them back on. So we had a few disparities in there because sometimes when you're working with 3 different agencies, OCFS may miss, prior recipients. So I'm glad that we were able to catch a good amount. We can go to the next slide. Okay, so I just wanted to hit on some specifics. If you have any students who you think may be eligible, though the deadline is passed, you can still submit their consent form to the email that's listed in this PowerPoint. It's not guaranteed that they will receive funding this particular year, but it's possible that they could, but at least they'll be newly eligible for the next year. So, anytime during the year, if you find this student may be eligible, this student, have them submit the consent form and each one of you should have it in your files. If you need me to resend it, I have no problem doing it. So I just wanted to also, in the second bullet, reiterate, there's no separation between EOP and non-EOP foster youth, all right, because it's coming from the same source. So I know before we had a separate list for EOP, separate list for non-EOP. They just combined. But what I did was, if you had an EOP program on your campus, I CC'd the EOP director, because I know that sometimes the financial aid and the EOP directors work collaboratively. The award we were allowed to give, this is for SUNY, was up to $9,000 for the 2021 academic year. This year, SUNY's amount. So please keep track of the funds, because like every year, SED requires a report on the fund usage. It's just a template you will fill out, as much as possible where the funds have went. And also, I just wanted to highlight, I know that the payment works a little different for state ops and community colleges, and just wanted to remind community colleges, when budget reaches out about the amount that's on your campus, to please just respond back so that we can send the appropriate amount. For example, if you have, students, enough to cover 6 students, we would need to know, because this year you may have eligible 4 students. So next year, we're not going to send another 6 students. We have to be able to kind of budget that out. So what has happened is that some of the money has been on your campus, maybe from prior years, because maybe somebody withdrew or something. There's different variables, but we were able to, when you report back, we can say, okay, we don't have to send a full amount, even though they have 12 students, we can send the funds there. If there's a situation where a student may need more than the threshold due to extenuating circumstances, just contact me. For example, intercession housing or food insecurity situations. So, and just this last bullet, we have approximately 490 students who were successfully identified this year. So about this amount, so these students have completed consent forms, have been deemed eligible for funds, and funds on the campus to cover these students. All right. So I just want to say kudos to you. Thank you for helping us identify these students. I think last year was half that number. So, yes.
I was just going to say, we have a couple of questions in the chat, if you want me to give those to you now.
Sure.
Okay. One person is asking, if the student's unmet cost of attendance expenses exceeds $9,000 a year, is it possible to get them an increased amount, or can we use unspent from another student?
You can, if every student is packaged to, capacity, and you have the remaining funds on your campus to cover that student who may need the other, you can use the funds that are already on your campus. I hope that answers.
Okay. Here's another question. We were recently notified that we have a transfer student from the community college that previously received funding that will be attending our institution now. Do we simply notify your office so that they can be added to our roster?
Absolutely, because I'll also have to let SED know. And also, I know you've been in communication with the other campus, but just so the campuses communicate with one another, let me know, and then I'll let SED know. And then if the student is transferring for the fall, obviously, I mean, for the spring, obviously they would get half the award. If they received 4,500 for the prior semester, obviously it will be, cut in half. I'm not sure what the numbers are there. Yes. All right. All right. So this is a letter that I think it might have went out today, but it will be going out soon. This comes from HESC. Um, um, no, a new consent form is not needed. If if a person received funding before, a new consent form is not needed. I see in the chat. This is the letter that is going out from HESC about intercession housing. So, this comes down, of course, from the governor's mandate and everything, just to make sure that every student has a place to stay. This has been, going on for several years. But of course, with COVID and the changes that have been going on within, just to make sure that every student is secure. They can, of course, reach out to you or reach out to, EOP if they're in EOP. And, there should be, if the campus can accommodate, if the student is a Foster Youth College Success Initiative recipient, they can use funds for that. So if we can go to the next slide, I'll just go to the next slide and share. So the Foster Youth Success Funds would cover. We particularly, there's nothing written that we require a student during intercession break to take classes. We don't require that. I don't know what the campus's policies are, but it's been kind of reiterated across the board, SED, OCFS, and everything, make that these funds could cover a student to make sure that they're not homeless. If there's in danger of being homeless, these funds can help cover in that area, and also with meals. So if you're not tired of me talking, you can also visit the Making College a Success, the resource guide. This particular link will take you to the whole process. It'll tell you more about the Foster Youth College Success Initiative, Q&A. There's a fact sheet in there with a lot of questions that answers a lot of questions. You have student testimonials. You have a lot of different things within there. I would encourage you to check out this website for any information that you may need going forward. This is a very good resource. So I just wanted to talk about some supplemental support for foster youth. There was a young lady that reached out to me, Miss Wells, who has a program. It's a 501c3 that is basically it's called Together We Rise. It's a rapid response program. So this program is for foster youth in particular. So she was looking to see if SUNY could partner. So we're partnering in this initiative, and they provide funding for students who have emergency need that are foster youth. And their goal is a 24 to 48 hour turnover. So if a student has issue, if they live off campus, it's a little muddy for foster youth initiative funds to cover that, but off campus, and they're in danger of being, they have to make it through a month. They can help out with the rent for that month. If there's a utility that's about to be cut, they can help out in that particular area. So I put myself down as a contact. So if you had a student, and I also have my colleague, Mark Sanders, he will be put down as a contact. If you have a student in that situation, you can let me know. They'll reach out to the student. They'll send a link, reach out to the student. And there's a form that the student will have to complete. It's a referral form, and then they would take it from there. The students do not receive any funds. So if it's a situation where they need grocery support, it goes to wherever the source of the food is. Or if there's support where there's a situation where a car broke down or something like that, they're paying directly to the mechanic. They're very specific, want receipts and everything. But their thing is that they're trusting all the verification that we've already done at their foster youth. So there's no more further verification that needs to be done. They are looking to just help and assist. This initiative is in 11 states right now. New York just, coming on board. This young lady found me and everything, and we're connecting from there. So this is a resource that's available. If you want to know more about it, feel free to let me know. I can send you more information on that. So also, we know that money is not enough, funds are not enough to keep, to supply everything that youth need. I'm looking to form a foster youth student network to reach out to these students to make sure that they're involved with one another, and kind of have them come together, because some of them may have the issue of being a little apprehensive about sharing their status. But if you hear that another 489 students are just like me, and it's actually more. But these were the students who were verified. But I believe that it's probably twice that number. But if you know that, you can kind of network. So I may ask for assistance in reaching out to these students just to combine, them together. We're gonna have, look to have a Zoom meeting, talk about some options and stuff like that, about, going forward. And just to offer some support. Colleague with mine is working with that. And if anybody, so I see what's the referral. So what you would do, because I'm the contact, if you have a student within that situation, you could just contact me, and then I'll let Together We Rise know, and then they'll contact the student, and then the student will fill out the referral form. They'll need all the details. It's just a quick form just to know what needs to be handled, and then they'll take it from there. Again, what I love about it is that, it's a 24 to 48 hour turnaround. So it's meant for emergency response. Now, it's not meant to sustain, meaning if there's a situation where a student is off campus and they need their rent paid, for the next 6 months, they're not gonna do that. But if you're in a situation where you're stuck in a month, they would help you out. If there's a situation with a car or something like that, it's just, where you're stuck and you just have a situation, they can help in that situation. It's meant to be emergency response, kind of like an EMS situation. All right, I think if that be all, feel free to reach out to me if you have any more questions.
Oh, so you just have another comment just saying that allowing the students to network is a wonderful idea.
Thank you. I mean, it's necessary, and sometimes with this whole COVID-19, the pandemic, it really brings out creative ways to really connect, because it's so necessary right now for all of us, for all of our mental health, for everything going forward. And I just, my heart breaks for these students who their first experience in college is remote learning, and it's tough. So we've with FISA, the foster youth, one of the foster youth groups, they're connected with a lot of youth, and they put together something great for all the students to get together, which was great. And it was very effective because, we had some people, mental health experts, to kind of talk about some things that can be done, some games, all of these different little things help. I mean, it really does. So we're looking to kind of form that network, to expand it, because just granting money is not enough. We need that social, emotional support for students to succeed. We all know that, when we had our college career, the extra push is vital. It's not just the funds. So, so we're just looking to do what we can. So thank you all for your help. I really appreciate everybody. It's been a pleasure talking with all of you, through email and everything. Some of you I've called on the phone. And if I don't get right back to you, it's because for every call or email I get, there's about 5. So I'm one person, and this is half my position. I'm also a campus liaison for the Colleges of Technology Opportunity Program. But I appreciate everybody in the contact. So thank you.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate you being here today. Hope you have a great weekend as well.
You too.
I have a quick announcement for everybody. Lisa has contacted me, and since she has a meeting at 2, she would like to start early because she feels that there might be questions. So if it's all right with everybody, she is going to start at 1:15, so we could take our break now. As I said before, this is going to be recorded, so if you can't, see all of Lisa's because of her starting early, it will be recorded, but I just think that it's a great idea to give her that extra time for questions. So, and again, thank you, Osei. I'm going to put myself on mute for a while. If people want to talk while they're having lunch, that's fine. But as I said, Lisa is going to be here at 1:15 for everybody. So thank you. I see Lisa has her presentation up, which is looking wonderful. So I know we would all like to welcome Lisa Simpson, Director of College Services at HESP today. Thank you for being here, Lisa.
Thank you very much for allowing me to start a little early. I wanted to make sure that I had plenty of time for questions. I'm going to be providing you with a HESC update today, a little bit of everything that's going on with HESC. Then I can open it up to questions a little later. So let's start with the 2021-22. Seems hard to say that, but I guess it'll be here before we know it. As you are all probably aware, the TAP application opened on October 1st, as well as STEM, along with the FAFSA. About a week later, we were able to start processing. So we loaded the information for that year on the HESP.ny.gov. So it's available if you wanted to. We're working with a specific student and you wanted to see if they filed for this next upcoming year, you would be able to see it as long as they had your school code there. The application this year, we were always trying to find enhancements to kind of make it easier for students and to kind of find a way that the guidance that students have. So this year we focused on parental information logic. So we did change the logic for parents because in the past, a student would indicate that their parents were divorced and not remarried. And then we would allow 2 spots for 2 different Social Security numbers. So we were finding that students were putting in both parents' Social Security number as well as the name because they had 2 parents instead of just adding the custodial parent. So we added logic that if the parent said that they were divorced, not remarried, and had a divorce separation date, we would only allow for it to have 1 field so the student wouldn't in error, because if both Social Security numbers were there, we would send both Social Security numbers to tax and finance, and a lot of times it was making the student either ineligible or not getting the appropriate award because we were including both income. So we're hoping that that helps the logic a little bit, guides them in the path. Also for 21-22 for Excelsior, the tuition reset, as you knew, it was going to be reset every 4 years. It'll be the 21-22 tuition rate, and this is for new and renewal recipients for Excelsior. That's for next year. Student ID processing, it has not gone away. It is not a one and done. So you should still continue processing your HE 9751 files, which are your the files that we send out asking for student IDs. Because if we don't have a student ID for someone, it's not going to be sent on a file for processing. So you're not going to receive them on a student status listing, on a manifest, on a remittance advice, on a roster, until we get that student ID. One thing for schools that have 2 school codes, an upper division and a lower division, if a student last year was in an upper division and we got a student ID for them and now they're going to a lower division or vice versa, you do need to send us, we will request the student ID again for the other code. We do have that on our enhancement list, but with other things bumping up the line, such as the Dreamers and citizenship and other more pressing priorities that have been dropped down a little bit. Our hope is to eventually use the federal code for the student IDs, and then if you had two codes, it wouldn't affect anyway. But for now, we will still be sending it out if they do change codes. Processing for 2021. Summer and fall rosters were produced October 14th, 2020. Excuse me, a little bit late, but we did get them out. We are running the monthly schedule, and the schedule is out on the HES website. So you can take a look to see what days we're running 2019 and what years we're running 2020. We sent out the rosters, and we made a payment in October. You should have gotten a bulletin in the last week or so. I think it was the beginning of November. But we haven't got authorization for any payments after that. So just keep in mind that if you check our bulletins regularly and make sure you're signed up to receive our bulletins, we will alert you when we get authorization to do another payment round. So for now, the October one is where we stand at this point. Fall 2020 prepayments, they were available the week of the 26th. And just as a reminder, with all our payments, the total is 80% of the calculated prepay rate, sorry. But the college accounting reports reflect the full amount. Right now, the 20% withheld are not cuts to the student. So you should not be only posting 80% of the award. You should be posting the full award. It is considered a change in payment schedule made to schools. So you're getting 80% now and 20% at a later time. So you should be crediting your students with the full amount of their New York State award. So you shouldn't reduce it, and you should be deferring against the tuition for the entire amount of that payment as well. For 2021 Excelsior, the application period closed. We again tried to streamline the application. We put some additional logic in to kind of guide the student based on how they answered a certain question, whether they were going to be an independent student or whether they're going to be a dependent student. We added the logic in for the one parent if they're divorced and separated. So we tried to streamline it so the student would only get the appropriate questions. We're not really sure right now. We are planning for a spring 2021 Excelsior application, but we have not gotten final guidance for that. So we are preparing, although we have not gotten a final approval that we will be offering one. So you should stay tuned, and we will let you know as soon as we get more information about that. We also changed the income verification for new applicants. I'm going to talk about that in a moment. We also changed the credit verification process, and I'm going to talk about that in a little more detail. So the new applicants for the income questionnaire, we adjusted to capture all parent information for all dependent students. So for new applicants only, the student does not need to complete a TAP application if they are not income eligible for an award. However, we needed to get the parent's social security number and name so we could send it to tax and finance for IVP, as well as those who applied for TAP. So this is the only scenario where a student would not need to complete a New York State payment application or a TAP application if they're over the income. But again, we are capturing the information to send, so everybody will go to tax and finance. So all applicants with verified income, and it comes back that they are a match, they have completed the income process. There'll be applicants whose income is over the income level. They will receive a denial notice. And then there'll be applicants with mismatches that are going to result in an income questionnaire. So this would be where the parent, they said the parent filed a tax return and we are not able to find it at tax and finance. So in that scenario, we would send them an email, have them log into their account, and they need to do an income questionnaire so we can further process them to get the income resolved. So they'll get a notification. And just as an FYI, we've sent a couple of reminders for students that are in this scenario for pending income questionnaires. And I do plan to send one out either probably Monday or Tuesday while they're home on break or maybe home for good, reminding them that they haven't done an income questionnaire. And that, so for a new applicant, if we don't have their income, they have not even had the opportunity to go to a contract until that happens. For a repeat recipient, again, they will not show up on a manifest for you. So we are sending it to both populations and asking them to upload the income questionnaire for us. So the new credit verification, having some discussion with Shirley Clark. The intent of this was to relieve extra work on the colleges. And so we had an agreement with the State Education Department that with all 20 Excelsior applicants that indicated they were first-time students, we would send a file to SED. They would provide us, excuse me, with the high school graduation date of the student if they were found in their system. So they would, in essence, tell us if they were a first-time recipient. So it will update the scholarship system with those that are determined as first-time students. And so we are determining first-time student as a graduate as a high school graduation date between April and August of 2020. So that was the threshold that we were using to determine if they were first-time applicants. For those who could not be found on the SED file as 2020 graduates, we put those on a credit verification to the schools, and we're asking you to provide us with the credit information in the same manner that you have for the past couple of years. And also those who had indicated they had previously attended college, they're also sent for credit verification to the college. So I looked this morning and there were still a lot of credit verifications that are pending with the colleges. So I ask you to talk to the person that does your credit verification so we can get them cleaned up in case we open a spring application. And some of these students are waiting for a decision to see if they will be eligible and for an Excelsior scholarship. So we have completed the SED portion and we have updated as many as we can that way, and the rest we need to get from the colleges. But again, most colleges have a good number still to, and I know everybody's very busy, but if you could take time and see what you can do about getting those cleaned up just so the students can take advantage of the scholarship if they are just awaiting credit verification. I did talk to Shirley a little bit this morning. We're going to talk again. The way the banner system is written, I believe that you use some of the information when you get the credit verification file. Since you're not getting the file for the freshmen that we are finding out from SED are really first-time students, we're going to talk in the next week or so to see what we can do to accommodate or what else we can do to help. Our intent was to save work, so hopefully there were a lot that SED determined as first-time students, so hopefully that will help in the long run.
Yeah.
For Excelsior returning recipients, this year everyone needs to complete the New York State payment application for 2020. So we have sent a couple notifications to the students informing them of this requirement. And we are going to send another one. But the students that don't have an application are going to be taken off the student status listing. I think they probably already had because they're considered an incomplete renewal. So if you're working with students that are Excelsior eligible and you don't see any payment application, please ask them to do that. We will, again, send an application out, but there were still a couple hundred that haven't done it. So need to get going on that so they can finish.
Lisa, can I ask quick, would you rather have questions at the end, or you've got a few right now that are in the chat?
I think let's wait till the end, and then maybe I'll answer it as we go along, but let's wait till the end if that's okay.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.
Okay, so Excelsior and TAP tuition processing. There were a couple schools that we've been back and forth with on how this process works. So I thought it might be a good opportunity to kind of review how it's working at this point. This is a change from how it worked when we first got Excelsior. So, but it's been a couple years since it's been working in this manner. So the tuition rate reflects the lower tuition rate if the student has an Excelsior and a TAP award. So for both programs, it will default to the lower tuition award. The school certifies the TAP award. Usually that is done first because of the timing, is that the Excelsior can't be done until the end of the semester. So if it's prior to certifying the Excelsior for the term, the school can use the current tuition rate as long as the student is not eligible for an Excelsior payment. So what that means is if the student has a TAP and an Excelsior, and they are looking to do the TAP first, and you know that your student is fully funded, so that would be the scenario, you can certify the TAP at the current tuition rate, and it will process and not be reduced. And I verified that with our IT folks this morning, just to be extra sure. So the second scenario, which is on the screen now, is when the TAP is not certified and you're certifying the Excelsior. So this would be where the student, I don't know, maybe did their TAP application late, or you're waiting for something, or it's just not done ahead of time. So at the end of the term, if the student is Excelsior eligible for a payment, at the end of the semester when you're certifying the Excelsior, you would certify with no changes to tuition for either program because they would be at the lower tuition rate. So you can do them both at the same time. You can do the Excelsior, or you should be doing it even if you do TAP first. You're going to pay them at the lower rate because they are eligible for a payment for Excelsior. If the end of the term, there's no payment for Excelsior, so again, they're fully funded with other aid, you can certify the Excelsior at the capped tuition rate. So you're still going to leave that at the lower rate. And then you can also go in and certify the TAP at the current tuition rate. So if somehow or another the student got certified at the lower rate for TAP and now they're fully funded, you didn't know they were fully funded in the beginning, so you did the lower rate and then an outside scholarship as an example came in, now they're fully funded, you can go in and recertify the TAP at the current rate if the TAP award or the SUNY tuition credit would be impacted. So you can go back in and do it after the fact. So that, I just wanted to clarify that that is the process with what tuition to charge and how it processes. So kind of going back years, year by year, we're going to talk about 2019-20 HES processing. Right now, all certifications should be processed at this time. So because there are errors, because people need their money, because for Excelsior, they need to be done in sequential order, we're asking schools to, and I know everybody's really, really busy, but we're asking for you to start certifying, make sure fall 19 and 2020 are certified. If not, please start that process now. I know there are a lot of Excelsior for 2019 of fall that are not processed yet. So again, we get the phone calls of where's the money and looking for things. So we should start processing at least fall 19. They should be done on a manifest. Please check your error reports, because what the gotchas were in some years is folks didn't check their error reports, and a certification errored out for either TAP or Excelsior, and then the aid year was closed. So it becomes very difficult when we have to close the aid year and they're still sitting out there in an error status. So we're going to try and work with schools to help them look for their errors and get them corrected, as well as their pending. We'll update and please update and resubmit your errors. Errors must be corrected and processed before we close out the year. The students will not get paid, and that is, I don't think anybody wants that to happen. So Mike Turner and I probably will be starting to reach out to schools to kind of help you if you need help, or to kind of alert you what we're finding for outstanding or errors. But I wanted to give you a screenshot just as a reminder of where you can go to find your errors. So for the TAP error report, you're going to go into Review Correct Student Certification, and you're going to check down there, the second to the bottom, anything in an error status. And this one you don't need to do term by term. but you might want to take a look to see if for some reason the certification errored out. It'll give you a reason for the error, and we can work with you to get you a listing what those errors would be, or some of the most common errors, and we can do that for Excelsior as well, and how to fix them. So some of them for TAP, they're usually pretty self-explanatory as to what's missing or what the problem is. And this is the Excelsior error report. This one does need to be done for a full year. But again, remember, if it errored out for the fall, you may not be able to have certified spring, so that may be pending. So, but this is a good place to start. And again, we have some documentation that I can get back out to the group, or Mike and I can send it to you when we give you, an email when we work with you, of how to rectify in any error that you may have. TAP partial payments for 1920. 80% of the full payments were made that began. You should have gotten them at the end of August. They were for payments for April through July 31st, 2020. 20% of the payments were temporarily withheld. Again, same as for other years. Don't cut this student's award. It's just a change in payment schedule. Student's award should not be reduced, and the school should credit the student's tuition for the entire amount of the award. And if one of the questions is, do we know when we're going to get the other 20%? We have not received any guidance. I know it has to do with the federal funding that we would be getting from the federal government. So we are not aware of when payments of the additional 20% would be made. So this is where we stand now. As we get more information, we will certainly let you know as soon as possible. And again, when we can release more funds, we'll let you know that as well. 2018-19, the academic year is closed for processing. If there is some big exception to a student who did not get paid or errored out, there's an exception. You can send an email to the scholarship email box, and the payments unit will take a look to see for consideration if they can help with anything. And you should continue to send requests to decertify students for closed academic years. That we can do. It's not an easy process to pay once the award year is closed. So that's not trying to be difficult. It's not an easy process because we can't do anything on the system. So it's a manual IT sort of process. So, but you certainly can reach out to the scholarships at hess.ny.gov if you have anything special or special reasoning why a student would need a payment. And then we do want to decertify records for closed accounts because we don't want them to get extra TAP points if they are not eligible. I can stop at that right here for a moment to segue if there's a couple questions that they want me to answer before I hit the new topics.
Okay, let's see. Can you provide a status on the review of citizenship documentation? We have submitted documents for a number of students.
All right, so actually, then I'm just gonna keep going with my presentation because this probably will answer some of those questions.
Okay, all right.
Rebecca. Okay, sorry about that. Okay,
no, that's
so
okay.
citizenship for 2021. We had a meeting late last night, and so your group is going to be the first ones that are going to get this information that I'm going to provide to you. I think it will make you happy. Happy Friday. It made me pretty happy. So anyway, September 24th, all students whose citizenship could not be validated from the most recent ICER was set to an error status of pending with a 0 award until their citizenship can be confirmed. So in 2020, HES was going to start doing the process of citizenship. And September 24th is when we sent students to the pending status. We do bring in the most recent ICER. I know someone asked that question at the NYSPA conference. We do bring in all ICERs. I think years ago, we only took the first ICER, but now we bring them all in. So we are looking at the most current record. we sent out information for them to either, correct their ISER if it was something for their ISER, or to provide documentation uploaded. We also said that schools could send in information to us. So then there's the population of students who did apply for TAP, but then really are not eligible, but they may be eligible under the DREAM Act. So we give them the link to the DREAM Act. So these are kids that may not have citizenship documentation that makes them eligible for financial aid, or it could be that population of students that live out of state that meet the criteria for TAP. So we do send that link as well in our communication. So this is the good part, I think. So we had a discussion last night and we said, how can we get these all updated quickly? Because the last thing we want to do, we want to follow the guidelines. We want to make sure we have all the citizenship information, but we don't want to have the student negatively impacted. And I know that we were getting, our reservation form was getting blown up with people from Citizens saying they couldn't register for the next term. So what we decided to do last night, and I talked to IT this morning, and it looks like it's a go within this time frame. And again, this is not out to the general population yet, but it will be. But since we were talking today, I wanted to give you this information. So starting Monday, all citizenship students who had citizenship issues that we couldn't validate from the ISER, who previously received a New York State award, will have their citizenship record updated. So this is the population. They are not first-time recipients. They have been receiving TAP 2, 3 years, maybe 4 years. Well, no, 2 or 3 years, or maybe a year. And then in the past, the schools have collected the documentation. So up until 2020, the schools were responsible for determining this. And I know that you have this from federal money. So so we said everybody that had a TAP award in the past, we would just update their citizenship records to an eligible status. So we know that you've collected it in the past, and the students will be set to citizenship approved. Their New York State award will be reinstated, and they'll be sent out on a student status listing. So the tentative plan is to take this population, and we had been working them. So we had processed probably 7,000 or 8,000 already. But at this time, we don't know if they were new students or returning students, or probably a combination of both. But so that population is already set, and they should be on your student status listings today, probably. We are going to update the other. I think there was almost 10,000 more, which probably will clean out our backlog. And we will update, and don't hold me to the 10,000, but I think that was about the number they gave me. We will make those updated tonight, and then at the latest on Monday. And then once we get this information all updated and these kids are now eligible, the intent is that we are probably going to run another student status listing for you to have, so you don't have to wait till the end of the week. So we are looking at possibly, and this is where it's still kind of in flux right now, but we're looking to run and maybe another student status listing on Monday or Tuesday. So all those students will be updated and back, their accounts will be back with whatever New York State award they were eligible for. So the population of freshmen, we'll call them freshmen, first-time recipients, not necessarily freshmen. They're the students whose citizenship could not be validated from the ISER, and they've never received any New York State financial aid. So they never got a TAP, they never got an Excelsior, never got a STEM. We're going to require them to supply the documentation still to verify their citizenship. So a lot of them probably already have, and a lot of them are probably already cleared. Once we get that first group in a citizenship eligible status, we're going to run a query against the upload records, and we're going to see who's left, and we're going to get those processed. And then we'll probably send out another reminder to whoever's left in this population. So once the documentation is received, we update it here at HES, the award will be reinstated, and students will be on the student status listing. So hopefully that will be a pretty quick process. Once we review the document, it is rather quick to update them. So this would be the only group. And then we're going to roll things over each year. So it's like if we've seen their passport for 2020, we will roll it over for 2021, et cetera. So hopefully that is good news today. It should clear up a lot of the students that are still pending. And we will, you know, as things develop, we'll be out with a bulletin. We're going to go out with a bulletin anyway, but since I was speaking with you today, I asked if I could, you know, give you the preview, and they were okay with that. So, and I do know that they've already identified the population, and I do know that they are going to be ready to run it to update them. So that will help with your students who are trying to register for next term, who have receivables, who have blown up our reservation phone request line, and it'll just be good for everyone to get everything cleaned up. So just want to talk a little bit about the DREAM Act. I do have a little bit of news in that arena as well. So just as a little overview, students complete a DREAM Act application, which is not the application for the programs. It is a DREAM Act application. And during that application process, the eligibility for residency, citizenship, and educational plans is determined. So once we identify that they are DREAM Act eligible, they can continue to apply for the specific New York State financial aid programs. The application periods are the same for all applicants, so whether they apply through the HESC website or they apply through the DREAM Act portal, the start end dates and application periods are the same for both programs. The applicants go through the same verification process. Once verification is complete, the TAP awards are calculated and the applicant's notified. The applicant information is provided to schools on a weekly student status listing, so you'll be able to see if they are eligible for TAP or STEM or Excelsior on the student status listing. And application, we're going to be putting the applicants on the payment application for certification shortly. Programming change is in place. It's in progress. We are close to being able to programmatically do it. If the applicant applies for an Excelsior scholarship, the records are sent to the school for credit verification unless they have been approved through the SED process. Once the determination is made, the applicant is sent the notification to sign the contract. Contract signed, schools notified, again, student status listing. The schools at that point should be estimating the Excelsior Scholarship Award and posting it on the student's award letter because they are eligible recipients, even though they haven't hit a manifesto or a roster yet. The renewal process, I had a couple schools asking how the renewal process works for this population. They need to complete a new program application to receive payment for an award in subsequent years. So it would be the equivalent of the New York State payment application, only the specialized one for the DREAM Act applicants. For right now, any change in information such as a school code change needs to be completed by HESC or by the student logging into their ISTS portal and asking someone at that company, which is hosting the applications for the DREAM Act, to make the update. But in the next couple of weeks, we're going to have the students will have the ability to go in and make changes within their account in the same manner in which they would at HESC. So in a couple of weeks, they'll be able to go in and change their school code and make changes as they need on their accounts. So here's the change that we have for the Dreamers. We appreciate your patience. We know it's been a long haul for getting the 2019 certifications out to you. We know that they're still in a student status listing at this point. We thank you for allowing them to still have the award on there as a pending award after this long time. But we've developed an interim process that would allow for the DREAM Act recipients for 2019 to be certified and paid on the system. So we have more details coming in the next couple weeks, but we will be sending out a roster to you that you will certify. It'll be a consolidated roster. You will certify the DREAM Act students. We will process them, and then we will send them out on an RA. So that interim process will be coming. We're going to start with the 2019, but we are working on the permanent integration to the HES system, so that will follow shortly after. So we do have a process that we are working on that will allow you to certify and pay the Dreamers. We're starting with the 2019 year, so that should be coming in the next couple weeks, and we'll give you more details as soon as we have them, but we are pretty far down a path that I think will work fine. It will be probably not noticeable to you at all how we're paying them. So hopefully we'll get at least 19 cleaned up, and then we will work towards 20 with a permanent integration coming shortly thereafter. It was a huge lift for us, and we have one set of IT resources that have to work on all the new programs. So while we have a whole grocery list, or at least I have a whole grocery list of enhancements that I'd like to see, we had to spend a lot of time getting the DREAM Act and the citizenship and some of our other COVID and some of the other programs keep bumping down the road. But we appreciate your patience, and I think this one will come to closure quite soon. Just want to talk about COVID-related processing. This is the process. The student indicates to the school they're affected by COVID. COVID collects the documentation. Impacted students must have been originally on track and not have completed or passed courses because of the COVID-related reason. Doesn't mean that the student had COVID, but it could have been the family, couldn't have been no access to remote. You know, on our website, there's a pretty thorough Q&A for the reasons, but so they would do a COVID, so you would identify them as COVID. As Shirley mentioned, I believe in the banner system, you do indicate COVID, but you need to certify online using the COVID flag. At this time, all certifications have to remain unprocessed for using the COVID flag. We have not gotten final approval, and I believe it is based as well on funding. So they are going to remain unprocessed until we received further guidance on the ability to pay using the COVID flag. So we'll notify you once we get approval and we can start processing. There are some schools and some students who you indicated it with the COVID flag set to yes, but then as an example, they did made up in summer. So you don't want to use the COVID flag, or you don't need to, or pending complete, and then now they have a grade. If you want the flag removed, it's not something that you can do because again, it's unprocessed. If you want to send an email to priority services at hes.ny.gov, we will have IT go in and take the flag off because we cannot process. So it is a little bit of a longer process. Send that email. I usually am picking up those emails. I send them to IT once a week. So I would say you're not going to get, the flag will not come off for at least a week or two, because again, they have to go in and do a database fix. So they fit it in when they can fit it in, but they are starting to catch up a little bit. And so thank you for your patience, but we'll get them done as soon as possible. And I do keep a log and I do check. So once the COVID flag does come off, though, you are going to need to go back in and recertify to what you want the certification to be. So once the flags come off, you can see if they're off. I can send you an email, but you will need to recertify it with the information that you intended for their situation at this time. Just on some other scholarship updates. 2020 scholarship applications not yet available, the part-time scholarship for community colleges, and the APTS program as well. So we did not even send out any 2021 participation agreements. I know there's a couple schools that tried to send in a list, but that will error out. So please do not award any APTS funding at this time until we get more details on whether or not that program will be a go. We'll let you know as soon as we get any decision or we're told whether or not these programs are going to be funded. And just so you know, the Award for Excellence notifications have not yet been sent out. And these are for first-time recipients, so your graduating class of last May or June. They are, if they have gotten it in prior years, those you will see and those you can process. But any new applicants have not been sent from state ed. The process actually starts with the state education department. They send us a list, and then we send the information to the schools. So we have not gotten the listing yet from state ed, and I believe they're on hold as well, similarly with the part-time scholarship and the APTS program. Our communications center, a funny story. So I did a presentation for NYSPA, and I said, oh yeah, the scheduling system's working well, you know, one-on-one appointments, we're calling students back. And then a couple schools said, yeah, but it's like a 3-week wait. And so I get on because I was in the office that day, and I got on and I clicked on a date, and it let me make an appointment like 2 days later. And I was like, no, I'm on. I got an appointment for 2 days later. So after the fact, when I get off the webinar, I found out that the only reason I did get in there was because someone had just canceled it like 2 minutes before I clicked it. Canceled their reservation, so it did look. So appointments are available Monday through Friday, 9 to 4:30. We do have a backlog right now, but most of the reservations are citizenship questions. So on Monday, when we are able to process those through, we are going to figure out a way to either cancel these students' reservations, reach out to them and say your citizenship is fixed. If you need to talk to us about something else, let us know. If not, we will cancel the reservation. So while it is backed up now till the beginning of December, we will probably get a lot of openings up once we get the citizenship, because we were looking in that is the bulk of the calls coming through. So so the process has been working. We're taking 500 phone calls a day. A lot of students are saying they're not getting a call, but we record everything and we monitor everything. And in the most cases, when we look it up, they either don't have their voicemail set up, they didn't answer the phone, or they gave us the wrong number to call. So it's still a work in progress. We're looking to finesse it. But it does seem, and in the beginning, I was making calls, and actually, particularly the parents were very appreciative that they didn't have to sit on hold and wait, and that we would call them with their questions, and then, of course, one question leads to another. So, at the bottom is the place where you can go and make a reservation. College officials can make a reservation. I would suggest you send an email to Priority Services. That mailbox is monitored by my staff, and while we had a little glitch in access for a few of us, so we got a little behind, everybody's back on and running. So if you need assistance, or you want to walk through, or you want a tutorial, we send it to us, and we will someone will get back to you, because I have multiple people checking that on a regular basis. But you can, of course, schedule an appointment as well. And the last thing I just wanted to mention is, in talking with Patty Noren, Mike Turner and I are going to be providing some more training for SUNYFAP, and I don't want to blow the thunder or jump the gun, but there are topics that, it's now is applicable to talk a little bit more. Maybe there are new people doing Excelsior, maybe there are new people doing TAP certifications, and this doing webinars is a great way for us to be able to disseminate the information, even if it's just a refresher. So we do look forward. Forward to working with you and to kind of providing some more training and go into some more detail on some of these topics. So thank you again for letting me share the HES news with you today, and I'll take any questions.
Lisa, thank you so much for all of this information. I want to remind everybody that this is being recorded. You have several questions. I'm gonna do my best because I think that you've answered quite a few of them. Shirley wants to know if you can go over the new tuition rate for Excelsior again.
Yes, so the tuition rate, it's for 21-22. It's going to be for both new and repeat recipients. And we believe it will be the current year 21-22 tuition rate. So we're just validating that. That is the interpretation. But I am going to we are validating that is, but it is going to be new and returning recipients. And we are, we'll let you know once so it would have to be SUNY's tuition rate of 21-22.
My
That's what
concern, my concern was when they did the frozen tuition rate the last time, it was the year before. So
Yep,
I just
we know that. Yep, we know that. That's why we went back with clarification and how they're reading it. So we'll get, right now we believe it to be 21-22, but we are getting further clarification.
All right.
So
if
we have it, we'll let you know.
We still have to wait for your final clarification. Okay, thank you so much, Lisa.
Yeah, the way we read it, it's 21-22, but again, you know, we're checking everything, double checking everything, but it would be all recipients.
Okay, and then Lisa, we've got several questions about payment for the fall. It looks like nobody's gotten any payments for the fall yet.
They should have gotten payments October. October's payment should have gone out. It was a bulletin the other day. I can't get on to look right now. So keep in mind, are you talking about payments or are you talking the RA? The RA went out, and then the payment has to go through the state financial services.
Okay.
So it could be a timing issue. Sometimes it takes a little longer for them. I refer you back, and I can double check as well when I get back on after we're done here. But I think that the bulletin is out there. So I'd go back to the bulletin. That's when the payments were made. But again, it goes through the state financial services, and that sometimes take a couple days to hit their bank account if they're looking for that when they say payment. The RA.
Okay. Yeah. All right. And some people later on are saying they've gotten 80% of their prepayment for the fall. They received that in October.
Yep.
Just to chime in, this is Cindy from Delhi. I feel like the state ops haven't received any funding yet. We certified fall payments like as soon as we could, our fall awards. We got an RA, but we still have no money to back it up. And I asked SUNY and they didn't see any money either. I don't know. Community colleges have said they got money.
Yeah, the community colleges would receive money because they receive direct payments, but the state ops do have to go through SUNY. And I just wrote to Drew Walsh in the budget office to see if he's aware of any payments that came through. So hopefully he's on his email and will email me back. I'll let you know.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Erica.
Okay, Lisa, there's also a question about some campuses are saying that HESC is using $12.50 for college fee and not $25 in the initial Excelsior tuition amount.
Well, the Excelsior does not include fees.
Okay. That was something that Shirley had written. I'm not sure.
Is it a specific campus? Because we did make the.
Yeah, I got a report from a campus who's looking at your system and see Excelsior recipients have a tuition amount that reflects the 32.35, which is the rate, 12.50, which brings it to 32.47. But it should, and this is for fall 2020, but it should show $25 because the college fee went up to 25. The college fee is not affected at all.
Shirley, send me an email on that. I'll have to look into that.
Okay,
I'll look into that. I need payments area to look into it because they're the ones that update the college profile.
all
Was
right.
it just one campus?
Yeah, right now it was just one campus.
Okay. All right. So send me what you have in this campus, and then I'll take a look, and we can take a look at what the other payment structures have as well.
Okay,
That's the first I've heard of that issue. So we'll take a look at it.
Okay, we're also asked if we can have an update on the APTS for 2021.
I think she gave
Still on
that.
hold. Yep. Still on
Okay.
hold. Yep. When we're told, as soon as we know, you'll know. Yeah. So,
I'm trying to read through these. I know that many of them you have answered already. Patty Norton's asking, will the Excelsior user guide be updated so that it has all of the current guidance? I think you said you're working on that.
yes, but the problem with that is there's a lot of guidance that we need to update on that, and that will take away from helping with what we're helping the schools. We had quite a few retirements. I am trying to get as much information in there, but that is a big lift with little people. So again, I have to prioritize what we do, but I will try and get as much guidance out in writing to people, even if it's not in the manual. So if I send an email out to the group and say something, then you should print that email and keep it. And it will get into the manual. But for the interim, that is what you can do.
Okay. Is priority service email the best way to submit documentation?
No, DocChack would be the best way to, if it's processing, DocChack would be the best way, and that's the process that we had been using. Priority services would be if you need training, if you have a specific account that you don't know what's wrong with it, you're seeing something that doesn't look right on your accounts, if you want to check on a specific student, if you need to send a death certificate as an example, you should send that through DocTrack. And we do have people working DocTrack because that goes to the processing area.
How will you deal with students who go from permanent residents to citizens and their U.S. citizenship is now not confirmed?
They go from permanent residence to citizenship. I don't know. We have to look into that. We're looking into permanent residence, how we're going to handle that. I mean, ideally, if a school gets a scenario where that happens and they collect the citizenship, so they could send us the paperwork would be the easiest way to do it. We'll have to look into that. There's a couple scenarios that we have to kind of work out, but we were working on the 95%. The schools always have the opportunity, if something changes in that arena, to send us the documents because we just have to have them on file. It doesn't have to come from the student. So that would probably be the easiest way, but we'll have to look into how we're going to handle those.
You're popular today, Lisa. We've got a few more here. Can
That's okay.
let us know? Can you let us know approximately the total number of DREAM Act recipients in the 2019-2020 year?
I don't have that number. I don't even have access to that to look it up.
Okay. Is there any change or any chance for APTS for 2020 to 2021?
Yeah, it's pending right now. I mean, we're not saying that they're not going to do it. It's just pending approval right now.
Okay.
I wouldn't award any students don't award anybody right now, but we have not been told it's not going to be funded, but we have not been told to fund it. So kind of a limbo.
We've got some questions about the impacted students. So for those determined impacted, should they have been certified 8 with the flag or Cert 1 with the COVID flag?
Cert 1 with the COVID flag. If you certify them as a 5 for TAP as part-time, they're not going to get full-time TAP. So you would certify them as a 1, eligible, and use the COVID flag.
Okay, will the timing for setting citizenship student awards to pending going to be that far into the semester every year?
No, it was a one-time programming thing. So we started late. We didn't start till September. We're sending out citizenship for 2021. Right now, where we'd be sending out they'd get that message that we need to verify their citizenship. We're of course going to clear the ones that we can clear, but no, it was just because the program went into place in September.
Okay. We have a couple community college questions. What will community colleges use for the 21-22 Excelsior tuition rate? Are we allowed to use our individual rate?
We're still getting clarification on that.
Okay.
Hang on just a second, I'm writing that down. I just want to make sure that I address both of those when we get that back from the powers. Okay.
And we can capture these questions for you too, Lisa.
Okay. Oh, that'd be great. Thank you. I'll get back as well. Yeah, as soon as we get guidance on the what.
Because tuition rates really aren't approved, ahead of time, even for the SUNYs,
Yep.
So that's kind of
HES doesn't make this determination, so right. No, I understand that they set their rate later.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, I mean, to me, it looks like you have covered everything else. But if anybody wants to speak up and say anything else besides thank you so much, Lisa, for all of this information.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you for inviting me. And, I do think that now that people have gotten to working remotely, I do think now that if we start doing some training, it will be all good because we can delve more into the topics of specific programs. So I look forward to the opportunity to being able to work with you on more topics and as we move through the semester. And we'll keep you updated on any new developments as we get them.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Good luck at your next meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, everyone. Well, Lisa went a little bit early. I reached out to our next group, and they are willing to start early as well. So I would like to introduce Kimberly Babby, Audit Manager, and Dave Lacra, Senior Internal Auditor from SUNY, who have agreed to talk to us today. Thank you, you guys.
Hi, good afternoon.
Hello there.
Can you hear me? Just want to make sure. Okay. So I'm Kim Babby from the Office of the University Auditor, and my colleague Dave Lackraj and I are going to be discussing the CARES Act HERF funds today. Dave and I and the University Auditor, Amy Montalbano, have been assisting SUNY System Administration since April with the CARES Act. We've been monitoring updates from the CARES Act, from the ED, NASFA, and NACUBO. And we have been involved in reviewing campus plans, distributing audit guidance to help campuses in the event of an external audit from the ED or as part of their single audit / A133 audits. We answer questions from campuses, sometimes on a daily basis. And we have also been reviewing website reporting of the campuses as well. As some of you may have reached out to you regarding the website reporting. So with that, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Dave today.
Hi, everyone. Can you guys see the presentation on the screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it looks great.
Sweet, thanks. So today, just a highlight overview of what we're going to be talking about. We're going to focus on the student aid portion of the CARES Act, and we're going to be looking at the website reporting, and if campuses have funds remaining, how to go about and distributing those remaining funds. I know SUNY put out new guidance out there. Hopefully everyone received it. And then we're going to talk about some of the award decision making and kind of documenting the campus's justification there. So initially when this whole CARES Act reporting, there was no official reporting elements yet. Until later in a few months afterwards, they started to establish reporting requirements. The first one was doing a 30-day report, and then they published saying that the campuses need to do a 45-day report. SUNY as a system, they went ahead and they created a template for campuses to utilize, which I'll share on the next screen. So far, we want campuses to present on their webpage their 30-day and their 45-day and also the quarterly reports. So when reporting your 30-day and 45 days, we want campuses to clearly identify those dates, clearly identify the 30-day report, the 45-day report, the day that the report was for. And for the 30-day report, it could be either 30 days from this campus GAN notice date or the June 10th date when the campus were able to draw down the funds. So either one of those dates we can support. When reporting, again, you're supposed to report all those 7 elements. There is nothing, the only 2 elements that would be constantly changing would be the cumulative numbers for the amount of students that received the award and total dollars dispersed. So those 2 numbers will be changing for the 30-day and the 45-day reports. And then for the 45-day, after your first 30-day report, it's 45 days from that date and then up to the September 30th. So you have to report 45 days for each day up to the September 30th deadline, which will be your quarterly reporting. And it all starts with the 30-day date is key, because if campuses messed up on that date, it would throw all the reporting off for the 45 days and so forth. Anything to add, Ken?
No, Dave is correct that the importance is setting up that 30-day fund report, because it will drive all the other reporting dates. So we have worked with some campuses over the past couple of weeks trying to get that 30-day report date correct, so that then their subsequent 45-day report dates would also be correct. Because I think there was some confusion as to whether the 30-day report was the date of the GAN notice or the date of June 10th, when there was an email sent out to the campuses saying that the funds were available. The community colleges may have a different date that they drew down the funds that they could potentially use as well. But if there's any questions, they could just reach out to Dave and I, and we can review the website with them. And as we have time, we've also been trying to reach out to campuses specifically to talk about their websites. So we have a question, Dave, that says, have we let the campus know if the 30-day report date is incorrect? We are trying to do that, but we have also been inundated with reviewing amended plans. So as we get more and more time, we will reach out to you when we see errors in the report. It's just us getting the time to do that. So that's why we wanted to take a time again to walk through this with everyone today and give you some more information and to reiterate what the requirements are. So it all starts with the 30-day, like Dave said. Start with your GAN notice or that June 10th date or the date that you drew down the funds, and start going 30 days from there and then 45 days from that date and so on until you get the quarterly report. Okay, Dave.
All right. Like I mentioned, here's the template that SUNY had published to all the campuses. Where the 2 arrows are, those are the 2 elements that will be changing in the different reports, the 30, the 45-day, and the quarterly. So those are the numbers, again, the total amount of funds that's been dispersed and the total amount of students that received the funds. Again, SUNY put this template out there. Campuses don't have to mimic exactly this format. They can use similar language It could be in a different order. Where we have a group down there, we've seen campuses where they've been kind of combining the award ranges and the methodology together, which is fine. There's no specific format that they have to follow, but this is just kind of a guide for campuses to utilize. And these are the 7 elements that need to be posted onto the website. Talking about, so after the 45-day, campuses have to do, the last 45-day, they have to do a quarterly reporting, which begins with the quarter ended September 30th, 2020. Again, the report should clearly indicate this is the quarterly report for September 30th, 2020. Some campuses have been saying first quarterly report, which is fine, or quarterly report as of 9/30, whatever date. So again, campuses have to report the total number of students awarded funds and total dollar dispersed for the quarterly period. So for example, we only need the campus to report those numbers just for the period. Initially, we had told campuses to do cumulative numbers and also quarterly numbers, but we got clarification from the ED saying that they only want the numbers for the period. The next reporting is going to be due January 10th, 2021, and that would be from the period of October 1st, 2020 to December 31st, 2020. Again, for the quarterly reporting, the only 2 elements that are changing are the total dollar amount dispersed and the total amount of students that received the funds. The rest of the elements are not changing. And then if the campuses have dispersed all their student aid during whether it was the September 30th report or in the next reporting, campuses can go ahead and indicate on their webpage, this is their final reporting. We pulled some language here where the campuses can indicate this is their final quarterly report posting, which covers all of their HERP funds expended for the CARES Act. Once the campus put that up on their webpage, they do not have to do any other additional reporting on their webpage. And again, the quarterly report is taking place of the 45-day report.
And just a reminder that you have to maintain your 30-day and 45-day reports in addition to the quarterly report. You don't have to do 45-day going forward, as Dave said, because a quarterly takes the place, but you still have to have your 30-day and 45-day reports out there. And that was per the ED on their latest webinar that they had many weeks ago. And because they may be looking for the websites for those on their annual reporting that'll be coming up. Okay, go ahead, Dave.
So this is just an example of how a 45-day will look like. We have a few campuses that we selected that we can show as well. Again, it all starts with we're clearly identifying the 30-day report, the June 10th date, or the July 10th date, which we're losing the June 10th date as when we started our 30 days. And then, 45 days from the July 10th date will put us at August 25th. And then for the quarterly report, it's just we just have to report the numbers for the quarter, and that will be from your last 45 day to September 30th. So then the following quarter would be as of 10/1 till December 31st of 2020. So that's one example. We have a few more I'll kind of share.
And Dave, I just want to remind everybody, this is a change from the last time we spoke because we had updated guidance from the ED. The quarterly is only periodic and not, it's not cumulative. The reporting for quarterlies, again, is not cumulative. It's just periodic.
Yep. So here's one example. This is Alfred's. They kind of did a grid or chart format. They are losing their GAN date as their first 30-day report. They clearly identify that this is their 30-day, 45 days, and they are reporting the different numbers. And they have their other elements within the web page. So here's the requirement saying that they signed a certification, how much they receive, And then below that, they have their awarding methodology and the amount of the funds. So that's one example.
And they also have their quarterly report for institutional as well, right there on the webpage.
Yep, right there. Yep. So that's one. ESF is another example. This is kind of a little bit different. They, instead of doing a chart format, they went ahead and just posted everything right ahead on their webpage. So just give campuses an idea. Here, again, we can clearly identify 30, 45 day, quarterly, and this campus is using the 6/10 date instead of the GAN date as their first 30 day. And again, institutional reporting should be somewhere on the CARES Act page as well.
And it was not unusual for campuses to have zero funds distributed at the first 30 day as well.
And here's one more example. So this campus, SUNY Poly, they decided to go ahead and do links instead. So they're reporting, they have their information above, and then they started to do 30, 45 day, and they did kind of attachment links. And here within each attachment, they have their reporting. So either method is fine. It all depends on, I guess, the manpower the campus has and whatever they feel is easier for them. All right. Again, the institutional reporting, just want to make sure that you can clearly find that on the CARES page as well. We've been telling campuses to kind of clearly indicate that the institutional reporting clearly identified that, whether it's institutional reporting. Some campuses have been labeling it the same name as the document, which is fine, but it's probably easier to just say institutional reporting. And usually you kind of want that either towards the end of your student aid reporting, just be easier to develop, sorry. And finally, the ED has not finalized the proposed annual reporting. So again, like that reporting will be due July 29th, 2021. And that period is from March 13, 2020 to June 30th of 2020. So it's covering all of those disbursements during that time frame. We did receive notice from the ED, which I believe Erica sent out on the financial aid listserv, requesting campuses identify a submitter and an editor before December 4th, 2020. And basically the submitter will be the person in charge of submitting the report to the campus, and the editor are the people at the campus that have the ability to edit that document. We don't have specific guidelines on who the campus should decide on who those people should be, and we're just leaving it up to the campus to decide. But if everyone could just please send that out to the ED, I believe you should use the herped.gov web email link and just forward that to them.
Right. I believe it was in the guidance that went out from Erica as well, what they should send on that.
Okay. All right. Also, in addition, since a lot of campuses have revised their plan, we want campuses to also update their webpage for any changes, whether they change award amounts, the ranges, any communication, different communication that went out to the students or instructions. We just want to make sure we're very transparent and we have that on the webpage as well. Anything to add, Kim?
Nope. And if you have any questions about that, again, you can reach out to us. And some plans, some campuses' original plans actually had allowed for potential awards in the fall. So there wasn't many changes. Other plans said specifically spring 2020, and they had deadlines. So you just want to be cognizant if you've changed deadlines that you've updated your webpage for those deadlines. And this also, your webpage and your plans become key as well, because what my understanding is just from a few campuses is that when you're undergoing the single audit that they may be using the plans to audit against. So you want to make sure your plans are up to date. And one campus referred them to their webpage for the plan. So then you therefore definitely want your webpage updated with the correct information. And there's no right way to update your webpage. You can say, you know, they have the original in one section and the amended parts in another, or within the original, you can have this, you know, X was amended. So no right way, just make sure you update them.
And talking about the new guidance, so on November 10th, about a week ago, System sent out this new proposed guidelines on how to disperse the remaining funds. Campuses should make every effort to disperse the student aid funds by the 24th. We know that's relatively soon, and if campuses can't meet that deadline, if they can at least get the funds out by the end of the fall, that's our primary focus. Again, if we can't contact the students by the end of the fall semester, we might run into a similar situation for some campuses that happened during the summer where they couldn't get a hold of the students. So we're trying really hard to get the funds dispersed before the end of the fall semester. Campuses don't need to amend their plans and website, as we mentioned. And if they're revising the plans and losing the new methodology, they don't have to submit the plan to System to approve again. Surely, if campuses want us to take a look at it, we can, but you do not have to do that. And campuses need to identify the students receiving the awards under new methodology. So it's really up to the campus if they want to use the same method they did for the spring students, or if they want to change the cohorts and award amounts, they can do that as well, depending on the amount of funds available. And then the next big thing is outstanding checks. We notice during our audits, we notice a lot of campuses are waiting to, are waiting on their outstanding checks. Usually it's like 90 days or 120 days. We realize that time frame might be too long, and we kind of want campuses to speed up on it. Because if we have any remaining checks outstanding, whatever funds we have left and we can't get it awarded before the year mark, we'll have to return those funds, and it will also affect the institutional dollars that we have to refund as well. So we just want campuses to kind of like implement a timely process and cleaning up their outstanding checks. Anything else, Kim?
Sure. I'll just recap. So on the new guidance, that it is our understanding the guidance went out from SUNY System Administration due to the increasing risk for campuses having large amounts of student aid awards still available that had not been dispersed, because the awards were supposed to be emergency grants to students. So they felt that the risk was increasing daily by the longer the campuses held those funds. So therefore, the new methodology went out to give the campuses a mechanism to be able to get those funds out as soon as they could. They had put out the date November 24th. So again, everyone should strive to do that. Every campus should strive to do that. And if not that date, because you're in the middle of another plan amendment and trying to wrap that up, then at least by the end of the semester. And the outstanding checks, the ED on their webinar did address this in a question, and stated that you definitely need to follow up on these with students. You potentially have to do your due diligence to reach out to the students and then document that due diligence and trying to reach them, give them some type of final notice. And then those funds can come back into the, come back into the pot and be distributed to other students before you lose those funds or have to turn them back. We have a question, Dave, that says, can we go back to the slide showing the SUNY draft web with data elements and show again where the final report statement should be placed? So that final report statement for the quarterly, for the student aid portion, you can put it before the word quarterly, or you can say quarterly report. If it's going to be December and it was a quarterly report 12/31/2020, You could either put a statement at the end that says final quarterly report, or you could put it at the beginning. There's no right way to do that. You just want to make sure everybody understands that that is your final quarterly report.
Correct.
And if needed, we can also have Erica distribute these slides again to everybody, or whoever would be easier to distribute the slides so you can have them and refer back to them. And the other thing that we had talked about, Dave had went through, is that the ease of being able to see your reporting on the websites. We can't stress that enough as well, because the ED has been pulling report information from campus websites. So it should be easy for them to find. So if someone's Googling a campus's CARES Act, so, like SUNY CARES Act at whatever campus name, they should really be able to come right to that CARES Act page. It shouldn't take them long to find it, and it shouldn't take them very long to find your reporting, because it's supposed to be, in their words, transparent. So just keep that in mind. I don't think we had too many issues with that, Dave, there are some campuses that we had to go down 2 or 3 levels, but for the most part, you could Google it. So just make sure on your own web pages. And if we address some reporting issues at the campus, we'll address that as well. So we have a question that said, I thought our revised plans had to be finalized by 11/24 and not distributed. So we completely understand how that communication could have been understood to have a plan in place. SUNY System Administration were reading it. They meant it to read that they must have a plan in place to distribute all the funds by November 20th. The accent on that being distribute the funds. They didn't mean to have the accent on that to be on the plan in place. So definitely can understand how that confusion could occur. And that's why some campuses have said they are in the middle of just, finishing up a distribution of phase 2 and would need till the end of the semester. And another individual said, thought the funds needed to be below 30% by 11/24. That is true, but we have still been encouraging campuses to distribute the funds as soon as they can, so that they're not holding on to a majority of funds for the next semester or longer, because it will be coming down to 1 year pretty quickly for many campuses. So again, these were emergency awards. ED did allow to go into the fall, but SUNY System Administration is advising all the campuses to distribute those funds that are remaining as soon as possible, to minimize the risk to those and to institutional funds. Next question was, if now all distributed, can we post a final report ASAP and not wait for December? Yes, you can go ahead and, if you've distributed all your funds, you can post that report anytime. You don't have to wait till the January 10th due date. You can post it at any point.
Yep. Alrighty. So one thing that we've been doing during our audits is looking for data anomalies. And how we've been doing this is we're gathering the data from the campuses, either from an Excel file based on the application data, and looking for any anomalies, and if the student was a priority 1 student versus priority 2 student, and the award amounts, if they got awarded above those predetermined award amounts, if they got awarded below, if students were approved but later declined, we're looking for things like that. We also look to verify students who certify a lower amount, but then the campus had an enhanced application process and asked for additional awards. We're looking at things like that. Also, we found things where students were awarded a priority 1 base grant, but looked like based on their EFC, they were a priority 2 and vice versa. So we encourage campuses to kind of, I know you already awarded the funds, but kind of do your own analysis and identify if there's anything out of whack in the plans. Again, like Kim mentioned, at the community colleges, the single audits, A133 audits have been started to be conducted. So you want to look for those things because, again, the auditors, they're looking at the campus plan for guidance and, auditing against that. Any comments, Kim?
No, and I had one campus actually did tell me that they had received some questions. Part of their A133 audit as to why there are different amounts for different students. And they just explained that was in alignment with their campus grid on how they're awarding for priority 1, priority 2. And some campuses had different amounts for part-time, full-time, on campus, off campus. So you just want to make sure those amounts are correct within your plans and that you awarded based on those so that there's no question.
So the next part we'll talk about is the award decision making. In the FAQs, there was a question 51 where the ED stated that, what data they will be requiring campuses to report, and they want campuses to report on how the amount of each grant was calculated. So especially for campuses that did an enhanced application and didn't had students that had expenses related to non-related to the disruption, or had expenses that were above the maximum limits that they establish in their plan, we want campuses to document those justifications to why. Same thing with denials. Sometimes there could have been a denial of an expense, but it appears that it was related to disruption. We have a few examples that we can go over in the next slide. So we want campuses, again, to document how they determine that decision. Because if, again, the auditors are coming in and looking at the plan and using that as a reference, and there's no notes or justification, or they can't clearly determine the student's narrative to why an expense was approved or denied, they're going to question those awards. And also we found, especially with the enhanced applications, where campuses did inconsistent awarding. So sometimes they award an expense for an electricity bill because they had, were on Wi-Fi more often. And then in other cases, they declined it. So you just want to be consistent across the board when you're awarding those students, especially.
And I just want to say, like, where on that FAQ 51, where it says how much of the amount, and it talks about, what has to be reported to the ED. So we're not expecting, and the ED isn't expecting you to actually report to them how you calculated every amount to the student, meaning how you're going to report that in a report to the ED. But we are interpreting this as, if you did not have a grid approach for an enhanced application, you still have to be able to identify how you calculated the award, especially because you're not using a grid. And so in some cases, campuses had amounts that were caps for like food, and they had internal caps so that they wouldn't, in rent and things like that, that they would say, all right, if a student asks for rent, food, technology, they can get 600, 500, 400, whatever the cap was. If it was not readily apparent when we were looking at it, how the calculation was made, then any other auditor is not going to be able to determine how the calculation of the award was made to the student, which was the point of FAQ 51 and the point of one of their elements, saying that how you awarded to the students and how the awards are calculated. So that's where if it's readily apparent why you approved something or why you denied something, then you don't necessarily have to have documentation. So if a student asked for a computer and they asked for $1,500 and you awarded them $1,500 and they had said they needed a computer to be able to keep up with the online classes, that's readily apparent to us, and that is an allowed expense. But if a student said that, or they don't list an expense, they listed all the things that happened to them, it is not always readily apparent to us what the student was asking for. And in cases funds were awarded, and you may have had a methodology of how you wanted to award those funds, but if you don't have notes to document that, you may not remember it upon audit, and your campus is at risk then if they question that award, then that could become a question cost for the campuses under audit. Sorry about that, Dave.
So here are just a few examples. I'll run through the 4 examples. Student A, they lose the services provided through the campus for the free food pantry prior to the campus moving to an online learning environment. And when the campus closed, the student requested reimbursement for those food expenses. When we first looked at this, the campus denied the expense, and we couldn't really tell why the campus denied it. Again, it appears that it was an eligible expense, but after looking more into it, the campus told us their rationale was that the food pantry was open during the whole online movement. So the student could have got their food if they went to the food pantry. So that's why they denied the expense. Student B, they requested reimbursement for food expenses for her family incurred since everyone, including her children, were home full time. Again, this expense was approved. Part of it was approved because it was related to the food related to her portion. The campus didn't approve the full amount. They only approved a portion of it. And again, in some cases, this expense could be denied because, again, she's asking for food for her children. I understand it's very hard and difficult times, but again, the purpose of the funds were to benefit the student, not other family members. Student C, they had appointments with the health center delayed and did not have any transportation or access to the other medical facilities in the housing area. Again, we couldn't really determine what the actual expense here was. We could see if the student requested, fees for their co-pays or transportation costs, but looking at the document, or the application, we couldn't really identify what the reasoning was. So that's why we're asking the campus to go ahead and kind of put their notes, their justification on why they approved the expense. And then the last one, the student had to pay for Wi-Fi and electricity for their apartment as they went remote. They spent a lot of time doing their assignments and virtual meetings and had to pay an extra fee and going over the limit. Initially, the request was denied. Again, it appears like a eligible expense and related to disruption. After we contacted the campus, we further learned that the student received the funds for this in another expense, another laptop expense. So they kind of increased that limit higher instead of splitting it out into the different bucket. So again, if without having the campus justification or notes, we don't really know how the campus awarded students. It's hard. Sometimes in some cases, it looks like the expense was eligible and it was denied, or other cases where it was not an eligible expense and it was approved. So again, we need campuses to document their rationale on their decision on how they calculate that amount.
So Dave, we have a question. Somebody wanted to know how many colleges we have audited. So there's audits going on by our department of the state operating campuses because we are not auditing community colleges. And as well as our office, our colleagues and internal audit departments at campuses as well at SUNY are audited. So I think between those and our office, we'll probably be at about 13 audits. Do you think, Dave? About 13.
About that.
We are in the middle of 7 ongoing audits right now of state operating campuses.
Correct.
And at various phases with them. And again, this actually goes back to one of NASFA's guidelines that they had put out, kind of one of their FAQ. I don't think it was an FAQ, but it was on their website. And it had to do between campuses needed to identify need versus expense, because the statutory requirement for the funds was expense. It had to be an expense related to the disruption of campus operations due to coronavirus and not the need. But completely we understand the need. The students had tremendous needs because of many difficult situations they were in. But unfortunately for the ED funds, the statutory requirement was an expense related to their disruption of campus. And that's where we just wanted campuses to shore up their documentation because there certainly were food needs for students and just highlighting those aspects of what was the actual expense incurred.
again, so documenting, no documentation supporting the award calculation. Students awarded more or less and requested more than they requested, but within the campus predefined limits. We need campuses to document their justification on why they awarded a student more or less, depending on the priority status, establish award amounts that they came up with. And then students indicating no refund needed, but they received an award. So there's situations where they said they needed no funds and they got an award. How did it happen? I'm not sure.
Well, in some cases, the campuses, some of the staff knew the students through other means and knew that they did not, I'm not saying that it's in this cases, but in other cases, they knew who the students were, they knew what they needed, and the students often were not their best own advocates at verbalizing what they needed. Or were not as savvy as they needed to be to verbalize what their needs were. And the campus actually recognized the needs because they worked with the students quite often. So it's just a matter of documenting that or having the student document that. Because independently, we would not have known that.
And then conflicting documentations, sometimes, especially where campuses had a base grant and an enhanced application, there was conflict in information between the two documents. And if there was, campuses need to reach out to those students, contact them to resolve any of those issues. For example, we had students completing the certification indicated that had expenses to meet the base award, but at the same time, the student completed enhanced application award and indicated total expense were less than their initial base award. So they had the base grant of $1,000 and they applied for enhanced grant, but indicated their expense total was only $500. So in that situation, we have conflicting information and it appears that the student was awarded an extra $500. So we need to make sure that the enhanced application says in excess and not the exact amount. Because then it could be conflicting with the base certification.
And this also, a lot of the stuff that we have gleaned from reviewing the campuses, we're sharing so that because we cannot get to all of the campuses to review everything. And that's why we're sharing some of these outcomes just so that other campuses, if they think something is similar to their situation, that they have the information and can do what they need to do. We're just recommending these things, and these are just to kind of shore up what the campus's documentation is that they're maintaining. So we have a question. It says, some students who did not report, they have students who did not report a qualifying reason to receive the award. They've tried reaching them several times to revise and discuss their application with no response. What is our responsibility related to these applications? So if you've awarded them already, then you may need to determine whether there's actually applicable expense related. If you haven't awarded them and you can't reach them, I would just make sure you document in your file, they have not awarded. Okay. So I would just document in your file that you've reached out to them, done your due diligence, trying to reach them. And, that's all the campuses can do. You've tried to reach them several times, just document that in their file. And I don't know that there's anything else you can do other than that due diligence. And in that case, and that goes along with what the ED had said during their webinar as well, when students hadn't cashed checks or hadn't accepted electronic transfers, is that just, do a due diligence. You've reached out to them, document the communications, whether it be text, email, letter, and then give them a final notification, and then you should be good as long as you maintain that documentation in the student's file.
Yep. I guess that's all we have. If any other questions, feel free. You can either put it in the chat or unmute yourselves and ask them.
And while we're waiting for questions, I have a request. Our department actually has a request. If We're looking for information from we understand the community colleges right now are undergoing the single audits, the A133 audits, and their CARES Act are being reviewed as part of those audits. And we would just like information from the community colleges as to what documentation has been requested by your auditors and what other information has been requested, just so that we can kind of gauge what's being reviewed and maybe help prepare, because I don't believe the state operating campuses have undergone that yet and won't undergo it for a few months. So we're just curious and want to understand what's being reviewed and what you've had to provide to the auditors. And you can just email Dave or I, or even Amy Montalbano or Erica, and just let us know. It doesn't have to be a long email, and then we may reach out to you if we have some questions just to get a better understanding. We've talked to a couple campuses that we've worked with related to their plans, and they've been very helpful with providing the information that their auditors have been looking at. Because then if we learn some things, then we'll definitely share with the group as we learn some things that may be helpful.
Yep.
Otherwise, if you don't have any questions today, Dave has posted our contact information. I just want everyone to be aware, though, that right now we are working remotely. So email will be the best way to get a hold of us. And we do try and respond fairly quickly to individuals' questions.
Yep.
I don't see any other questions.
All right.
So that's all we have for today.
Yep.
And I want to thank everyone for listening to our CARES Act presentation.
Thanks, everyone.
Yep.
Thank you, Kimberly and Dave. Thank you very much. Earlier, I just wanted to mention Lisa Simpson had mentioned about some training. Yes, that is true. What we thought is there is a lot of turnover, a lot of retirements going on in departments, and we should go back to basics. So we have scheduled with her for December 8th, a TAP training, and December 15th, an Excelsior training. It will go out on the listserv for everybody, but we're going back to basics, and we're working on a series of training on different topics. And the rest will come after the holidays, but we'll get those two in before the holiday.
This is Erica. I wrote it in the chat box, but for anybody who hasn't seen it, I did receive an answer from the SUNY Finance Office, who advised that the SUNY state operated campuses have not yet received
How are you?
the 2021 funds from HESC. That's the 80% of the prepayment value of your rosters. So they were expecting something this week, but that never happened. And they're going to reach out to HESC to ask when those funds will be made available.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, thank you so much to Patty Noren for coming up with the ideas for the training. I'm really looking forward to those trainings. Patty, I think they're going to be a great service to everyone, and I've heard a lot of interest, especially in HESC training. So I'm happy Lisa's already agreed to do some. We still have a lot of people on if people want to just chat with each other for a while, or, call it a day. I really want to thank everybody for being here today. I think it was really wonderful and successful, and I think the presenters were awesome, and I think you guys are great just for being here.
I wanted to say bye to everybody. Great day. I had to jump off for a while, but it sounded like everything went really well. So it's good seeing everybody. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you,
Take
Patty.
care.
You too.
Okay.
Stay healthy.
Bye-bye.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Take care.
Thank you, Carrie. Have a great weekend, everyone.